You didn't just buy bad products. You funded empires built on the gap between your insecurity and your wallet. Here are 101 times America cashed that check. 1. You probably think the pet rock was a punchline, a novelty joke that sold a few thousand units to deeply confused individuals before disappearing into the discount bin of history. Here is what actually happened. Gary Dahl launched the pet rock in 1975, selling smooth Rosarita beach stones packaged in a cardboard box designed like a pet carrier, complete with air holes and straw bedding, as if the rock required ventilation. The rocks retailed for $3.95 each, and Dahl sold approximately 1.5 million of them in roughly 6 months, netting him around $15 million in today's adjusted currency. The product's actual genius was the 32-page Pet Rock training manual included in the box, which gave instructions for commands like sit and stay. Commands the rock, being a rock, executed with perfect reliability every single time. Dahl reportedly conceived the idea during a bar conversation where friends complained about the high cost and hassle of real pets. He spent almost nothing on inventory. The markup was effectively infinite. America looked at a geological object that had existed for 4 billion years, decided it needed packaging and a manual, and paid $4 for the privilege. The rock didn't change. You did. 2. You probably assume the Snuggie was an embarrassing direct response television product that only purchased by lonely people with too many cats at 2 in the morning. That assumption is doing a lot of work for you, and it is wrong. The Snuggie generated over $500 million in sales, spawned a legitimate cultural phenomenon, and exposed a fundamental truth about how Americans acquire things they already own. Snuggie launched in 2008 via infomercials produced by All Star Marketing Group and sold 20 million units in its first year alone. The product is functionally identical to a backwards bathrobe, a product that had existed for over a century. The sole innovation was flipping the opening from the front to the back and removing the belt. Competing products like the Slanket actually predated the Snuggie and were functionally superior, but All-Star's infomercial budget and the deliberately absurd imagery of entire families wearing what appeared to be matching cult robes turned the Snuggie into a pop culture moment money couldn't manufacture on purpose. The Snuggie became a legitimate Halloween costume staple and an ironic group event uniform, meaning people paid $19.95 to wear something they then also wore completely unironically on weekends. You already owned a bathrobe. You already owned a blanket. America sold you the exciting merger of those two items, and you bought it so fast the factories ran out of stock. The backwards robe economy is still thriving. 3. You believe the premium bottled water in your hand, the one with the mountain on the label, the glacier font, and the name that sounds vaguely Scandinavian, comes from somewhere extraordinary and justifies its extraordinary price. Multiple major premium water brands have been documented sourcing their product directly from municipal tap water systems, processing it, filtering it, and reselling it at markups exceeding 2,000%. Aquafina, PepsiCo's flagship water brand, was formally required by the company in 2007 to change its label to clarify that its source is public water source, meaning tap water that has been purified through reverse osmosis. Dasani, owned by Coca-Cola, similarly draws from local municipal water supplies, filters the result, and adds a proprietary mineral blend. In 2004, a batch launched in the United Kingdom was recalled after testing revealed bromate levels above legal limits from their own processing equipment. The EPA regulates tap water more stringently than the FDA regulates bottled water. Your municipal supply is tested hundreds of times monthly. Bottled water manufacturers test far less frequently. Americans spend approximately $16 billion annually on bottled water. The actual production cost of the water inside the bottle is effectively zero. You are paying for plastic, shipping, and a font someone chose in a conference room. The water in your tap went through more quality testing than the water in that $4 bottle. You paid a 2,000% markup to drink municipal water from a container that will outlast your grandchildren. 4. You reach for those small white pellets at the health food store because you believe homeopathic remedies contain active natural ingredients that work with your body to gently treat symptoms without harsh pharmaceutical intervention. By definition and by law, homeopathic products contain no measurable active ingredients whatsoever. The dilution process that homeopathy is entirely built upon guarantees this outcome mathematically. Homeopathy was invented in 1796 by Samuel Hahnemann, based on the idea that like cures like, and that diluting a substance makes it more potent, not less. Standard homeopathic dilution labeled 30C means the original substance has been diluted 1 part in 100, 30 consecutive times. This produces a solution so dilute that statistically, not a single molecule of the original substance remains anywhere in the preparation. The United States homeopathic remedy market is worth approximately $1.2 billion annually. The FTC issued a policy statement in 2016 explicitly stating that homeopathic efficacy claims have no credible scientific support. A 2015 comprehensive review by Australia's National Health and Medical Research Council examined over 1,800 studies and found zero evidence that homeopathy outperformed placebo for any health condition. You bought a bottle of water, sugar, and the ghost of an ingredient that departed 12 dilutions ago. The medicine left the building. You paid for the building. 5. You strapped a silicone wristband embedded with a holographic disc to your wrist because the salesperson demonstrated, right there in the store, with their own hands, that you had more balance and strength while wearing it than without. Power Balance's own company publicly admitted in 2010 that there is no credible scientific evidence supporting any of their claims. They were legally required to say this out loud. Power Balance was founded in 2006 in California and grew explosively, generating over $35 million in annual revenue at its peak by selling rubber bracelets for $30 to $60 each. The company's marketing relied on paid celebrity endorsements and a demonstration trick so old it has a name: the compliance technique. A sales representative pushes down on your outstretched arm. You feel weak. They hand you the bracelet. Push again. You feel stronger. The bracelet is irrelevant to every part of that sequence. Australia's Competition and Consumer Commission forced the company to publish a public admission stating, "We admit that there is no credible scientific evidence that supports our claims." Power Balance filed for bankruptcy in the United States in 2011 with debts exceeding $10 million. The broader market it spawned, holographic bracelets, magnetic wristbands, frequency jewelry, continues generating hundreds of millions globally. You strapped a sticker inside a rubber band to your wrist, attributed your next athletic performance to the sticker, and the company eventually had to tell you to your face that the sticker did nothing. You probably still have the bracelet. 6. You bought the AB stimulator belt because the infomercial showed real people getting real results by doing essentially nothing, and the electrical pulses felt like something was happening. And something happening is the closest thing to a guarantee the category ever offered. The FTC launched enforcement actions against companies including Abtronic, Fast Abs, and Ab Energizer in the early 2000s, resulting in multi-million-dollar settlements and required consumer refunds totaling over $70 million. Electrical muscle stimulation is a real medical technology used in physical therapy for rehabilitation following injury. The consumer belt versions typically deliver currents far too weak and unfocused to produce meaningful muscular adaptation in a healthy individual. The more fundamental problem is that spot reduction. The concept that you can burn fat from a specific body location through targeted exercise or electrical stimulation has been definitively disproven by exercise science research. Fat loss is systemic, not local. Your body does not accept requests. Despite the FTC actions, the AB stimulator category continues generating hundreds of millions in annual sales globally, simply rebranding with new names, new celebrity faces, and slightly adjusted marketing copy that skirts prior consent decrees. You bought a belt that delivers a mild tingle to your midsection and expected it to accomplish the work of 10,000 crunches. The government sued the company on your behalf and issued refunds. You still see the ad and feel the pull. That pull has a name, and it is not electricity. 7. You bought the detox tea because someone you followed online held up the box and looked incredible, and the words flush, cleanse, and flat were arranged on the packaging in a way that felt scientific and also aspirational at the same time. The primary active ingredient in most detox and flat tummy teas is senna, a powerful laxative that the FDA approves for short-term constipation relief and specifically recommends not using for more than 1 week without medical supervision due to risks including dependency, electrolyte imbalance, and chronic bowel dysfunction. The results you saw in the before and after content were diarrhea. That is the mechanism. That is the product. The global detox tea market was valued at approximately $3.6 billion in 2022. The marketing model relies almost entirely on paying influencers to post stage transformation content, with before and after images frequently taken hours apart, using lighting adjustments and posture changes, rather than weeks apart using the product. The FTC has taken action against multiple companies in this category, and the United Kingdom's Advertising Standards Authority has banned numerous influencer posts promoting these products for making claims they cannot substantiate. The term toxin, as used across all detox tea marketing, is never specifically defined, because it cannot be. Your liver and kidneys process metabolic waste continuously without any tea-based assistance. You paid $40 for a laxative endorsed by someone paid to hold it, and the flat stomach in the advertisement happened in a bathroom, not over the 30-day program. 8. You spent money on a magnetic therapy bracelet, or a magnetic mattress pad, or magnetic insoles, because the science of magnets is real and visible and demonstrable, and it felt reasonable that something real and visible and demonstrable might also affect your joints. Human blood is not meaningfully magnetic in any clinical sense, and the static magnets used in consumer therapy products cannot penetrate more than a few millimeters of skin tissue under any conditions the product creates. The magnetic therapy market generates over $1 billion annually in the United States. Products range from $20 bracelets to $800 mattress pads, all describing essentially the same physiological mechanism. While hemoglobin does contain iron, it exists in a non-ferromagnetic form. The magnets in consumer therapy products are far too weak to exert any meaningful force on blood flow through human tissue at any measurable level. A 2004 study published in the BMJ examined magnet therapy for hip and knee pain and found no significant difference between real magnets and deliberately fake plastic magnets, a finding subsequently replicated across multiple meta-analyses. The FDA classifies most magnetic therapy products as Class II devices requiring only basic safety disclosure, not clinical efficacy proof, which allows manufacturers to imply therapeutic benefit without ever demonstrating it in controlled conditions. The magnet holding your grocery list to your refrigerator has more documented utility than the $200 bracelet on your wrist. One holds your list, the other holds your hope. Only one of those is functioning as intended. 9. You sat down, put your feet in the warm water, watched it turn dark and murky brown over the course of the session, and felt certain you were watching something leave your body. Because what else could explain the color? The water changes color because of a chemical reaction between the metal electrodes, the salt added to the water, and the electrical current passing through the system. Multiple independent laboratory analyses of ionic footbath water produced during actual sessions found it contained rust particles, oxidized electrode material, and mineral deposits from the water itself, not biological toxins, heavy metals, or waste products from the human body. In controlled experiments specifically documented in scientific literature, running the ionic foot bath machine without any feet submerged produces water that turns the exact same brown color as when feet are present. The reaction is entirely equipment-based. A single ionic foot bath session typically costs $25 to $60 at spas and wellness centers. Home machines retail for $80 to $400. The global market for these devices exceeds $200 million annually. The FDA has issued warnings about ionic foot bath claims, and there is no peer-reviewed clinical evidence that any measurable quantity of toxins, heavy metals, or waste products exits the human body through the soles of the feet during this process. You paid $40 to watch a machine rust in a bucket of salt water and decided the brown was yours. The machine showed you exactly what it was doing. You chose a different explanation. 10. You bought the colon cleanse kit because the language on the box described years of accumulated toxic sludge building up on the walls of your digestive tract, and that description was specific and visceral enough that it felt like it must be based on something a professional had observed. The concept of toxic intestinal plaque accumulating on colon walls has no basis in gastroenterology. Gastroenterologists perform thousands of colonoscopies annually and have never documented this supposed buildup in clinical literature. The myth of auto-intoxication, the idea that intestinal waste poisons the body from within, was a mainstream medical theory in the early 1900s and was formally abandoned by the medical community by the 1930s after evidence consistently refused to support it. The American Gastroenterological Association has no clinical category for intestinal sludge. The colon lining renews itself approximately every 3 to 5 days through normal biological process, continuously, without commercial intervention. The United States colon cleanse product market generates approximately $1.5 billion annually. Products typically contain high-dose fiber, laxatives, and herbal compounds. Their primary documented effect is diarrhea and temporary weight reduction from fluid and stool loss. Multiple case reports in medical literature document cleanse-related complications, including electrolyte imbalance, renal failure, and intestinal perforation from aggressive protocols. Your colon has been cleaning itself since you were born, without requiring your editorial input. You bought a $70 kit to intervene in a system that was managing fine, and paid the cost in 3 days of personal inconvenience. 11. You bought the acai berry supplement because the before and after images were compelling. The celebrity endorsement felt credible, and the word antioxidant appeared enough times on the label that it started to feel like a clinical outcome rather than a descriptor. The acai berry weight loss industry was one of the most aggressively prosecuted supplement frauds in FTC history, and the free trial model it perfected became a template for consumer financial exploitation that was replicated across dozens of product categories afterward. The acai berry is a real fruit from the Amazon basin with genuinely high antioxidant content. It is nutritious. What it does not produce is weight loss, a claim that has never been substantiated in a peer-reviewed clinical trial for this ingredient. Beginning around 2008, dozens of companies selling acai supplements used fraudulent free trial offers that enrolled consumers in monthly auto shipments of $80 to $90 without clear disclosure of the terms. The FTC estimated Americans lost hundreds of millions of dollars to these schemes. Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Mehmet Oz were falsely cited in advertising by multiple acai supplement companies without their permission or endorsement, leading to legal action and public denials from both individuals. The FTC brought enforcement actions against dozens of acai supplement marketers. The settlements produced refunds and conduct restrictions, but the underlying business model was simply replicated across subsequent supplement categories for years. A berry from the Amazon that you cannot buy fresh in most American states became the answer to national obesity via a banner advertisement. The berry did nothing. The banner did everything. 12. You bought the shake weight because the infomercial said dynamic inertia technology and 6 times more muscle activation. And those are precise-sounding claims made with confident delivery, which registers differently in your brain than a vague promise does. The dynamic inertia framing is marketing language with no established scientific basis. Multiple biomechanics researchers who examined the device found it produced less meaningful muscular activation than a standard dumbbell curl performed with equipment that costs $15 and has been available continuously since ancient Rome. The shake weight launched in 2009 and generated over $40 million in sales within its first year, fueled almost entirely by television infomercials and the product's unavoidably suggestive appearance, which made it the most widely mocked fitness product of its decade and ensured it received the one thing money cannot reliably purchase, which is cultural saturation. The American Council on Exercise commissioned an independent study of the shake weight in 2010. Researchers found that while the device produced some muscle activation, results were not significantly different from conventional free weight exercise and were inferior on several measurements. The product's advertising claimed users needed only 6 minutes daily. Exercise science is unambiguous that meaningful muscular strength gains require volume, progressive overload, and consistency, none of which 6 minutes of oscillation provides to a general population. The shake weight became a Saturday Night Live sketch subject within months of launch. You bought a weight that you shake, expected arms, and the comedian on television reached the same scientific conclusion as the researcher. 13. You paid a significant premium for toning shoes because the rounded sole was supposed to make every single step you took into a passive workout. And the idea of exercise happening to you, rather than because of you, is perhaps the most elegant product concept the fitness industry has ever packaged into footwear. Both Reebok and Skechers settled Federal Trade Commission enforcement actions for tens of millions of dollars for making exactly these claims. And the combined settlement total represents the largest FTC action against footwear companies in American history. Reebok settled with the FTC in 2011 for $25 million in consumer refunds over false advertising claims for its Easy Tone and Run Tone lines, which promised toned legs and improved glute definition through ordinary walking. Skechers settled with the FTC in 2012 for $40 million over similar claims made for its Shape-Ups, Resistance Runner, Toners, and Tone-Ups product lines. Independent biomechanical research, including studies commissioned by the American Council on Exercise, found no significant difference in muscle activation, caloric expenditure, or visible toning results between toning shoes and regular athletic footwear when controlling for walking duration and intensity. The combined market for toning shoes peaked at approximately $1.1 billion in annual United States sales in 2010. Both brands returned to conventional footwear categories following the FTC settlements, with the product category effectively collapsing under regulatory scrutiny. You were told the shoe would do the workout. The government investigated, fined the company $65 million, and issued you a refund. The shoes are still in your closet, and the situation they promised to address is unchanged. 14. You pressed the Kanoki Detox foot pad to the bottom of your foot before sleep, woke up 8 hours later, peeled it off, saw that it had turned dark brown overnight, and took that color change as confirmation that something meaningful had moved from your body into the pad while you were unconscious. The FTC took enforcement action against the manufacturers, and independent laboratory testing confirmed that the pads turned dark from moisture and heat, not from anything extracted from the human body. Kanoki foot pads were marketed nationally through television infomercials beginning in 2007 and generated tens of millions in sales within months. The pads retailed for approximately $20 per box. The FTC filed a complaint against Yehuda Abraham and his companies in 2010 for deceptive advertising, resulting in a $14 million judgment. Independent laboratory analysis of used Kanoki pads found no measurable concentration of heavy metals, metabolic toxins, or biological waste products. The color change is a straightforward chemical reaction. The pad's primary ingredients, wood vinegar and tourmaline powder, react with body heat and moisture to produce brown-black discoloration regardless of what the foot contributed. The product premise also violates basic human physiology. The soles of the feet have no biological mechanism for selectively extracting metabolic waste into an adhesive pad. The liver and kidneys handle that process without requiring your participation or your footwear choices. You stuck a damp tea bag to your foot overnight. It turned brown from heat, and you called that a healthcare decision. The government called it something else. They were more accurate. 15. You reached for the vitamin water because it is not soda. The label says so, the vitamins say so, the bright color and active lifestyle imagery say so, and paying $2 more for something that is not soda feels like the responsible version of wanting something that tastes good. Coca-Cola's lawyers, defending a class action lawsuit over vitamin water's health claims, formally argued in federal court that no reasonable consumer could be misled into thinking vitamin water was a healthy beverage. The company that manufactured and sold vitamin water argued in front of a judge that you should not have believed it was good for you. Coca-Cola acquired Glacéau, the maker of vitamin water, in 2007 for $4.1 billion. A standard 20-ounce bottle contains 32 grams of sugar, comparable to many sodas, with crystalline fructose as the primary ingredient after water. The Center for Science in the Public Interest filed a class action lawsuit in 2009 alleging that vitamin water's label claims were deceptive. In Coca-Cola's legal response, their attorneys argued the claims constituted puffery. Non-actionable marketing language no reasonable consumer should interpret literally. The vitamins present are primarily water-soluble B vitamins and vitamin C, meaning any amount beyond what the body uses at that moment is excreted within hours. You are not banking the vitamins. You are expensively urinating them. Vitamin water generates over $1 billion annually in United States sales. The company sold you a healthy alternative to soda, then told a federal judge you should have known better. Both of those things happened. The product is still on the shelf next to the soda it is not. 16. You paid for the muscle milk because it said muscle, it said milk, and that combination implied a nutritional alliance between two things associated with strength. And implicit associations are remarkably durable even when the label underneath them falls apart. Muscle milk contains no milk. In 2013, the manufacturer Cytosport was sued and settled for falsely implying through the product name that it was milk-based. Separately, a 2010 report by ConsumerLab.com tested 15 protein drinks and found that muscle milk chocolate contained arsenic at 12.2 micrograms per 3 servings, cadmium at 5.6 micrograms, and lead at 13.5 micrograms. Amounts exceeding California's Proposition 65 maximum daily thresholds for those substances in consumer products. The California Attorney General's Office filed action regarding heavy metals in protein products following the Consumer Lab findings. Cytosport settled multiple lawsuits related to muscle milk labeling and marketing claims between 2011 and 2014. The protein in the product comes primarily from calcium caseinate and milk protein isolate, derivatives of milk, processed and fractionated, but not milk itself. The name was chosen for brand resonance. PepsiCo acquired Cytosport in 2014. Muscle milk remains one of the top-selling ready-to-drink protein products in the American market despite its litigation history, generating hundreds of millions in annual revenue. The drink called Muscle Milk contained no milk, and in tested batches contained metals your body has no use for. You bought the name. The name was the only component performing as described. 17. You bought the airborne tablet in the airport because a school teacher invented it. The story of a schoolteacher inventing something to protect herself from classroom germs is a story your brain finds credible and sympathetic. And credible, sympathetic stories sell products at a rate that clinical trials cannot easily compete with. The FTC determined that Airborne's cold prevention claims were false, and the company settled a class action lawsuit for $23.3 million in 2008, requiring refunds to customers who purchased the product based on those specific promises. Airborne was created by Victoria Knight McDowell, a second-grade teacher from Carmel, California, in the mid-1990s. Good Morning America featured the product, massively accelerating national sales. The brand generated over $100 million annually at its peak. In 2006, the Center for Science in the Public Interest and a class action lawsuit challenged Airborne's efficacy claims. Discovery revealed that the company's sole clinical study had been conducted by a two-person company with no randomized control group, no blinding, and no peer review. A company created specifically for the purpose of producing a study. The FTC settlement in 2008 required Airborne to stop making cold prevention claims. The product continues to sell as a vitamin supplement, removing the specific cold prevention language while maintaining essentially the same brand positioning and the same airport shelf placement. A school teacher invented a vitamin tablet, hired a two-person firm to study it, went on morning television, sold $100 million worth, and then returned most of it. The tablet is still in every drugstore. The cold is still coming. The story of the school teacher still works. 18, you paid double for the clinical strength deodorant because the word clinical implied a doctor was involved somewhere in the process, and a doctor being involved in your antiperspirant felt like the kind of upgrade a responsible adult makes. The primary active ingredient difference between standard and clinical strength antiperspirants is the concentration of aluminum-based compounds, and at the concentrations used across both consumer tiers. The practical sweat reduction difference for most users is not consistently demonstrated in independent clinical trials. Standard over-the-counter antiperspirants typically contain aluminum zirconium tetrachlorohydrex at 15 to 25% concentration. Clinical strength products typically contain the same compound at 20 to 25%. The concentration difference is narrow. Prescription strength antiperspirants containing aluminum chloride hexahydrate at 20 to 25% are legitimately more effective for hyperhidrosis, which is an actual medical condition treated under physician supervision. The clinical strength consumer category borrows the language of prescription products without matching their formulation or their documented efficacy profile. Clinical strength antiperspirants retail at $10 to $15 versus $5 to $7 for standard products. The word clinical is doing the work that the aluminum cannot. They changed the label, adjusted the number by 5 percentage points, doubled the price, and placed it next to the regular version. You chose the one with the word. The word was the entire product difference. 19. You squeezed the Thigh Master between your legs with the confidence of someone who had read the science, because the infomercial explained the mechanism clearly, and Suzanne Summers demonstrated it with conviction. And conviction in an infomercial context is an extremely effective substitute for evidence. The Thigh Master can strengthen the adductor muscles of your inner thigh. That part is real. What it cannot do, what nothing can do, is selectively remove fat from the inner thigh area. Because spot reduction is not a physiological process, your body performs regardless of which device you're using or how many repetitions you complete. The Thigh Master was introduced in 1991 and became one of the best-selling fitness products in television history, generating an estimated $100 million in infomercial sales within the first few years of launch. The product was invented by Joshua Reynolds, who also created the mood ring, establishing a pattern of successfully commercializing things that feel functional without quite being functional. Exercise physiology research is consistent. The body metabolizes fat systemically based on total caloric balance, and where fat is lost first, And last is determined primarily by genetics, not by which muscle you exercise underneath it. Strengthening a muscle beneath a fat layer does not reduce the fat layer. The instructions were silent on that particular detail. 20. You took fen-phen because it was prescribed by a physician, approved for individual use by the FDA, and represented what appeared to be a genuine pharmaceutical solution to a medical problem that had resisted every other intervention you had tried. The combination was withdrawn from the market in 1997 after being linked to serious heart valve defects and primary pulmonary hypertension, and the manufacturer ultimately paid over $21 billion in legal settlements, one of the largest pharmaceutical liability resolutions in American history. Fen-phen was never FDA approved as a drug combination. The two drugs, fenfluramine and phentermine, were individually approved, and their combined use became widespread through physician prescription practice in the mid-1990s. An estimated 6 million Americans took the combination at some point during this period. A 1997 study published in the New England Journal of Medicine found that 30% of patients taking fen-phen who received echocardiograms showed abnormal heart valve findings. The FDA issued a public health advisory and requested voluntary market withdrawal within weeks of that finding. American Home Products, later renamed Wyeth, established a $3.75 billion trust fund in 1999 for fen-phen claims, subsequently expanded to over $21 billion total. America wanted a pill to fix the fork. The pill created a separate medical crisis requiring $21 billion to address. The fork was still there the entire time. 21. You gargled Listerine as a child because your parents told you to, and your parents gargled it because their parents told them to, and somewhere in that multi-generational chain of unexamined habit lives a marketing decision made in 1921 that has never stopped collecting. Listerine's manufacturer, Lambert Pharmacol, invented the word halitosis, from a Latin medical term, as a deliberate marketing device, transforming normal mouth odor into a clinical-sounding condition requiring their specific product as the only responsible solution. Halitosis, as a socially devastating diagnosis, was largely created by Listerine's advertising campaigns of the 1920s, which depicted romantic rejection, social ostracism, and career failure as the direct consequences of breath that their product could remedy. Listerine was originally developed in the 1870s as a surgical antiseptic. It was subsequently marketed as a floor cleaner and as a treatment for gonorrhea before Lambert's marketing team pivoted to oral hygiene and manufactured the consumer anxiety that would sell it for the next century. The American Dental Association recognizes that mouthwash with antibacterial properties can reduce plaque and gingivitis as part of a broader hygiene routine. The original advertising, however, claimed it could cure halitosis entirely, ignoring that most chronic bad breath originates from digestive issues no mouthwash touches. A company invented a disease, named it something medical, and sold you their existing product as the cure. You have been gargling the solution to their problem for 100 years. 22. You grabbed the vitamin water because it said vitamins, said water, and the combination of those two words in a brightly colored bottle positioned near the checkout felt like a reasonable compromise between the thing you wanted and the thing you were supposed to want. Coca-Cola's lawyers, defending a class action lawsuit over vitamin water's health claims, formally argued in federal court that no reasonable consumer could be misled into thinking vitamin water was a healthy beverage, meaning the company that manufactured and aggressively marketed this product as a healthy alternative argued in front of a federal judge that you should have known better than to believe them. Coca-Cola acquired Glacio in 2007 for $4.1 billion. A standard 20-ounce bottle contains 32 grams of sugar, with crystalline fructose as the primary ingredient after water. The vitamins present are primarily water-soluble B vitamins and vitamin C. Any excess beyond immediate metabolic need is excreted within hours. You are not accumulating the vitamins. You are briefly hosting them before your kidneys process them out. Vitamin water generates over $1 billion annually in United States sales. The company sold you a healthy alternative to soda, then told a federal judge that you should not have taken the marketing literally. Both events occurred. The product remains on the shelf. The soda is right next to it. 23. You bought Febreze and sprayed it on the couch after cleaning because the commercial showed someone doing exactly that at the end of tidying up, and the association between a finished cleaning task and the spray felt natural, which is precisely the outcome Procter & Gamble's research team engineered after the product failed catastrophically on its first attempt. Febreze was launched in 1996 as a pure odor elimination product and sold almost nothing. Consumer research revealed that people living with the worst household odors, pet smells, smoke, accumulated domestic life, had become so habituated to those odors that they no longer perceived a problem requiring a solution. The product worked. The market didn't know it needed it. Procter & Gamble's turnaround strategy, documented extensively in behavioral research on habit formation, involved repositioning Febreze as a finishing touch to cleaning routines. Not a problem solver, but a reward at the end of tidying. The psychological reframe had nothing to do with what the product does chemically. Febreze does work. The active ingredient, cyclodextrin, traps odor molecules and prevents them from reaching your olfactory receptors. That is genuine chemistry. Following the reframe, Febreze became a $1 billion brand. The product never changed. The instructions for when to notice you needed it changed everything. Someone rewrote the moment you reach for it, and you have been reaching ever since. 24. You spent significantly more on the Nutrisystem or Jenny Craig program than you would have spent on groceries. You followed the protocol, you lost the weight, and then, according to the long-term follow-up data that the marketing material does not lead with, you likely regained most of it within 2 to 5 years, at which point the business model was ready to welcome you back. A comprehensive 2015 review published in the Annals of Internal Medicine analyzed 45 randomized controlled trials of popular commercial diet programs and found that most produced modest weight loss at 12 months, with very limited evidence of maintenance beyond that window. Nutrisystem declared bankruptcy in 1993 before relaunching. Jenny Craig was sold multiple times between 1986 and 2023, when it announced mass store closures due to financial pressure. The United States weight loss industry is estimated at over $70 billion annually, with a high percentage of revenue generated by repeat customers, people who succeed, regain weight, and re-enroll. This return cycle is not an unfortunate side effect of the business. It is structurally central to the economics. Neither program addresses the behavioral, environmental, and physiological drivers of weight gain in a way the clinical literature considers sufficient for long-term maintenance. You are not a client. You are a subscription that lapses and renews on a biological schedule the program was designed around. 25. You bought the colloidal silver because someone told you pharmaceutical companies were actively suppressing it. And the suppression narrative is one of the most reliable purchase triggers in the supplement industry because it makes skepticism feel like complicity and buying feel like rebellion. The FDA formally stated in 1999 that colloidal silver products are not safe or effective for treating any condition, and the most notable documented side effect of long-term consumption is argyria, a permanent blue-gray discoloration of the skin that does not resolve when you stop taking it. Argyria cannot be reversed. Multiple well-documented cases of severe argyria from colloidal silver consumption appear in medical literature, including cases where individuals became visibly and permanently blue-gray. Silver does have documented antimicrobial properties in legitimate medical contexts. Silver-coated wound dressings and catheters are used clinically to reduce infection. That is a topical, controlled application at specific concentrations. Drinking silver in suspension produces no equivalent systemic antibiotic effect. The pharmaceutical suppression framing is a standard marketing device applied to dozens of products, providing an unfalsifiable reason to dismiss any regulatory or clinical finding against the thing being sold. You drank silver because someone said the industry was hiding it. Your skin can turn permanently blue. That outcome is documented and irreversible. The pharmaceutical companies did not cause it. The silver did. 26. You chose Crystal Pepsi because clear felt cleaner, and cleaner felt healthier, and that perceptual chain, transparent equals pure equals better for you, required no supporting evidence because your visual cortex made the case faster than your frontal lobe could ask for documentation. Crystal Pepsi was nutritionally identical to regular Pepsi in calories, sugar, and caffeine content. The only meaningful change was the removal of caramel coloring, a cosmetic adjustment that conferred zero health benefit to anyone consuming the product. Crystal Pepsi launched nationally in 1993 with an estimated $40 million marketing campaign and achieved approximately $474 million in first-year sales before collapsing within 18 months. As consumers discovered that a beverage looking like water while tasting like cola created a sensory mismatch most found deeply disorienting. The clear equals pure visual association was part of a broader 1990s marketing trend that included Tab Clear and other transparent beverages, all attempting to exploit consumer associations between colorlessness and purity, without any nutritional basis for the connection. Caramel coloring, the removed ingredient, is classified as generally recognized as safe by the FDA. Its absence from a beverage has no meaningful health impact. PepsiCo brought Crystal Pepsi back for limited nostalgia releases in 2015 and 2016, which confirmed that the product's only remaining market value is irony. They took the color out and implied you would be healthier. The sugar was unchanged. You just couldn't see it anymore. 27. You grabbed the 5-hour energy shot at the register because you needed to function, and it was small and confident and right there. And something that small, promising that much for $3.50, is exactly the kind of transaction your exhausted brain approves without much deliberation. The primary functional ingredient in 5-hour energy is caffeine, approximately 200 milligrams per 2-tablespoon bottle, which is the equivalent of 2 cups of coffee. The B vitamins present are dosed at 1,000 to 8,000% of the daily recommended value, which is a marketing number rather than a functional one. Water-soluble B vitamins are excreted in urine when consumed in excess of metabolic need, meaning the dramatic percentage figures on the label are describing the volume of vitamins your kidneys are about to process, not the benefit you are about to receive. A 2012 New York Times investigation and subsequent United States Senate inquiry found that the FDA had received over 90 reports of illness linked to 5-hour energy, including 13 deaths. The company maintained the reports do not establish causation, and the product remains on market as a dietary supplement. Living Essentials, the maker of 5-hour energy, does not disclose the exact caffeine content on the packaging, a notable information gap for a product whose entire mechanism of action is caffeine. The gas station had coffee for 99 cents. You chose the 2-tablespoon bottle with the dramatic percentage numbers. The caffeine content was identical. The receipt was not. 28. You poured the Gatorade because you exercised, and exercise creates the kind of moral permission structure where a fluorescent beverage feels not just acceptable, but earned, even if what you completed was 45 minutes on a treadmill at a pace that would not have challenged the Florida Gators offensive line the drink was created for. Gatorade was developed in 1965 by Dr. Robert Cade and colleagues at the University of Florida specifically for collegiate football players, exercising at maximum intensity for extended durations in extreme heat. The original formulation was built around replacing the glucose and sodium lost during prolonged elite-level physical output. It was never intended for general population use at recreational intensities. A 32-ounce bottle of Gatorade contains approximately 56 grams of sugar and 440 milligrams of sodium. For a person exercising at moderate intensity for under an hour, water replenishes sweat loss effectively without the sugar contribution. Pepsi acquired Gatorade in 2001 through its purchase of Quaker Oats for approximately $13.4 billion. At acquisition, Gatorade held roughly 83% of the American sports drink market. Pepsi's marketing expanded the target demographic far beyond elite athletes to include children at gym class and adults on ellipticals. The American Academy of Pediatrics has specifically noted that sports drinks are inappropriate for children during routine physical activity. A drink designed for scholarship athletes in Florida Heat became a standard children's beverage. Only one of those groups has the physiology the product was built around. 29. You bought the Hydroxycut because it was the #1 selling weight loss supplement in America, and #1 means something to the part of your brain that processes social proof as a proxy for safety. Even when what #1 actually means is that the marketing budget was large enough and the regulatory gap was wide enough to generate that volume before anyone noticed the problem. The FDA issued a public health advisory in 2009 recommending consumers immediately stop using all Hydroxycut products following 23 reports of serious liver injuries, including one death, which triggered a voluntary recall of over a dozen product varieties. Hydroxycut was the top-selling weight loss supplement brand in the United States at the time of the recall, with over 9 million units sold annually. The primary driver of earlier Hydroxycut formulations was ephedra, a stimulant alkaloid the FDA banned in 2004 after it was linked to cardiovascular events. After the ephedra ban, Hydroxycut reformulated, but liver injury reports continued with the new ingredients. MuscleTech, Hydroxycut's parent brand, settled multiple consumer fraud lawsuits in the 2000s over advertising claims, separate from the subsequent safety recall. The brand relaunched following the recall with updated formulations and is again actively sold. The advertising has not changed in any meaningful way. The regulatory system that allowed the original version to become #1 before the injuries were counted has also not changed. 30. You paid more for the natural cigarette because the word natural was on the box, and you understood that natural things are better than artificial ones, and that understanding, correct in many contexts, was being borrowed and applied to a product whose primary hazard has nothing to do with whether the tobacco was grown with synthetic pesticides. A 2002 study, published in the journal Tobacco Control, analyzed American spirit cigarettes, marketed as 100% additive-free natural tobacco, and found they delivered higher levels of nicotine, tar, and carbon monoxide than conventional brands, partly because the loosely packed tobacco burned more slowly and completely, increasing total exposure. The FDA's Family, Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act of 2009 specifically prohibits cigarette descriptors like light, mild, or low that imply reduced harm. The act does not prohibit natural or organic, which are now performing the same implied safety function the banned terms previously occupied. Reynolds American, now British American Tobacco, acquired Natural American Spirit in 2015 for approximately $4.7 billion, specifically recognizing the premium natural positioning as a durable market segment willing to pay higher prices for a health implication. A National Cancer Institute monograph found no evidence that smokers of natural cigarettes have lower risk of tobacco-related disease than smokers of conventional brands. You paid more for a cigarette that delivered more tar. The company that made it was acquired for $4.7 billion because your preference for the word natural is worth exactly that much to someone. 31. You handed your child the Hawaiian Punch because it was red and sweet and fruit adjacent, and the cartoon character on the label had been part of the visual vocabulary of childhood beverages for so long that its presence felt like endorsement from a trusted institution rather than a mascot invented to sell sugar water to people under 4 feet tall. Hawaiian Punch was created in 1934 in Fullerton, California, as an ice cream topping syrup. It was called Leo's Hawaiian Punch and had no connection to Hawaii whatsoever. The name was selected for tropical brand resonance. By the late 20th century, the juice content of Hawaiian Punch had been formulated to approximately 5% fruit juice. A 2023 reformulation increased the juice content in some varieties to 10%. The remainder is water, sweeteners, and artificial flavor compounds. The FDA requires that juice drinks containing less than 100% juice clearly disclose the percentage of juice present, and products below 100% may not use the word juice as the primary product name, which is why the label says fruit drink and not fruit juice. Keurig Dr. Pepper generates hundreds of millions in annual Hawaiian Punch revenue, with its primary market being children. Hawaii did not make it. Fruit did not make most of it. A California syrup company named it for atmosphere in 1934 and has been selling your children red sugar water for 90 years, using a cartoon character as the credentialing authority. 32, you wore the Crocs and told yourself they were orthopedic and comfortable and possibly even therapeutic, which is the story the early marketing suggested and which your feet partially confirmed because the foam is genuinely cushioning in the short term. And short-term confirmation is extremely difficult to argue with when you are standing on something soft. Crocs launched in 2002 at the Fort Lauderdale International Boat Show as a boating shoe, and early marketing emphasized the antimicrobial properties of the Croslite foam material. The brand expanded rapidly by targeting healthcare workers seeking comfortable all-day footwear, and the Health Association grew from that demographic's visible adoption of the product, rather than from any clinical validation of orthopedic benefit. The American Podiatric Medical Association has not awarded its seal of acceptance to the Crocs Classic clog. Multiple podiatric physicians have noted that the absence of a heel strap in the Classic means the toes must grip the shoe to keep it on, potentially stressing the plantar fascia and toe flexor tendons with extended daily wear. In Belgium, a safety organization issued warnings that Croc-style shoes generated static electricity capable of affecting electronic medical equipment, resulting in bans in some European hospitals. Crocs went from a near bankruptcy in 2008, posting a $185 million net loss, to generating over $3.5 billion in annual revenue by 2022. The foam did not change. The pandemic made not caring about shoes the defining aesthetic of the decade, and suddenly the orthopedic story was beside the point entirely. 33. You joined the MLM because the presentation was compelling, and the product seemed real, and the person presenting had a lifestyle you recognized as aspirational, and none of those things are fraudulent observations. The problem is what they were obscuring about the structure underneath them, which was the part the presentation was specifically designed to keep you from examining clearly. An AARP Foundation study in 2018 found that nearly half of MLM participants earned no income at all, and nearly 1 in 4 actually lost money after accounting for product purchases and business expenses. The study found median gross income for active participants was approximately $2,400 per year, before any costs were subtracted. The FTC's action against Amway and its 2016 settlement with Herbalife, which paid $200 million and was required to restructure its compensation model, established that the FTC actively monitors MLM compensation structures for pyramid scheme characteristics. The distinction between a legal MLM and an illegal pyramid scheme rests on whether income derives primarily from actual product sales to genuine retail consumers versus recruitment fees. In practice, this line is structurally difficult to verify and is frequently managed through careful language rather than fundamentally different economics. The FTC has noted that the top 1% of distributors earn the substantial majority of income. The product was always secondary. What you were actually selling was the opportunity to sell the opportunity. The company's lawyers spent considerable money ensuring the name they use for that structure is not the name everyone else uses. 34. You rub the anti-cellulite cream on the affected area every morning because the label listed active ingredients with clinical-sounding names, and the before and after images showed a measurable difference. And both of those things feel like evidence, even though neither of them is the kind of evidence that requires the cream to work in a lab setting rather than a photography setting. Cellulite affects approximately 80 to 90% of post-pubescent women and is primarily determined by gender, genetics, and the structural arrangement of fat deposits relative to connective tissue beneath the skin, a combination of factors that no topical cream currently on the market has been shown to meaningfully address at a structural level. Caffeine, a common anticellulite ingredient, can temporarily cause mild vasoconstriction and superficial skin tightening that briefly reduces visible texture. This is a transient cosmetic effect measured in hours, not a structural change in the tissue underneath. The FDA classifies anticellulite creams as cosmetics, not drugs, meaning they are not required to prove efficacy before sale. Claims must describe appearance alteration rather than body structure change, giving manufacturers significant room to imply what they cannot demonstrate. The global anti-cellulite product market exceeds $2 billion annually. No peer-reviewed clinical study has demonstrated meaningful, lasting cellulite reduction from any topical cream formulation currently available to consumers. You rub something on your skin to change what is happening structurally underneath your skin. The cream smells excellent. Everything else about the transaction was also cosmetic. 35. You burn through the ear candle because the concept had an elegant internal logic. Hollow cone, flame at the top, vacuum draws debris upward. An elegant internal logic is one of the most effective substitutes for evidence that consumer product marketing has ever discovered. Multiple clinical studies have demonstrated that ear candles do not create measurable negative pressure in the ear canal under any tested conditions. A 1996 study published in the journal Laryngoscope directly measured pressure changes using tympanometry during ear candle use and found no significant negative pressure generated in any test subject. Analysis of residue in used candles found it was candle wax, not earwax. The FDA issued an import alert in 2010 stating that ear candles are dangerous and should not be used, noting documented injuries including burns to the face, obstruction of the ear canal with dripped wax, and eardrum perforation, outcomes that are the precise opposite of the claimed benefit. Earwax is produced by the ear canal as a protective, self-cleaning mechanism, and in most people, the ear naturally migrates old wax outward on its own without external intervention. For genuine impaction, irrigation with warm water or professional microsuction are clinically validated options. Ear candles remain available online and in wellness stores nationwide, retailing at $5 to $20 per pair as general wellness products, a classification that requires no efficacy evidence before sale. You lit a wax cone on fire next to your eardrum and called it medicine. The FDA called it a fire hazard. Both descriptions are accurate. Only one of them was on the packaging. 36. You bought the celebrity vitamin pack because the person on the label had a body you found aspirational, and the implicit argument of the product is that the vitamins are causally connected to the body on the label, which is an argument no one stated directly, but everyone understood, and no one was required to substantiate. Third-party testing organizations, including ConsumerLab.com and NSF International, regularly audit supplements, and their findings show significant variation in ingredient accuracy and quality across all price tiers, with no consistent correlation between price, celebrity association, and actual product quality or potency. Celebrity supplement endorsement deals typically pay 7 to 15% royalty on net sales, or flat annual fees ranging from hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. These financial arrangements have no relationship to the celebrity's personal use of the product, their medical knowledge, or their involvement in the formulation process. The FDA requires supplements to contain their listed ingredients in labeled amounts, but does not require pre-market testing to verify these claims. A 2015 investigation found that some store-brand herbal supplements contained DNA from plants not listed on the label, and in some cases, no identifiable DNA from the listed plant at all. The athlete on the label is paid to be on the label. The label is the product. The capsules inside may or may not contain what they claim, and no one verified that before the shipment left the warehouse. You bought a famous person's face and received an optimistic guess in a bottle. 37. You bought the weighted blanket because the clinical framing was impossible to argue with. Occupational therapy, sensory integration, deep pressure stimulation, and a product with roots in medical practice arriving in the consumer market feels categorically more trustworthy than a product that originated in a marketing department, regardless of what the evidence says about the consumer version. The clinical evidence base for weighted blankets is genuinely limited. A 2022 systematic review published in the Journal of Evidence-Based Mental Health found that while some studies show subjective improvements in anxiety and sleep quality, methodological limitations, including lack of blinding, small sample sizes, and high risk of bias, prevent strong conclusions about weighted blanket efficacy for any specific condition in a general population. Weighted blankets in occupational therapy practice use specific weight calculations, typically 10% of body weight, and clinical oversight tailored to individual sensory processing needs. Consumer versions are one-size-fits-most applications of a nuanced therapeutic tool designed for a specific clinical context that most buyers do not share. The global weighted blanket market grew from negligible to approximately $400 million annually in the United States within a 5-year window, driven by influencer marketing and broad anxiety positioning. Products retail from $50 to over $300. The blanket may genuinely help you sleep. Warmth and physical compression have independent relaxation effects that require no clinical trial to confirm. The receipt, however, is charging you for the clinical framing, and the clinical framing is where the evidence gets thin. 38. You bought the kombucha because the label said live cultures and the bottle looked like something a farmer's market vendor would hand you with eye contact and a brief explanation of the fermentation process. And that aesthetic does a significant amount of persuasive work that the ingredient panel alone could not accomplish. The clinical evidence for kombucha's specific health benefits in humans is minimal. A 2019 review in the Annals of Epidemiology examined the kombucha research landscape and found that the substantial majority of evidence comes from in vitro cell culture and animal studies, not human clinical trials, making extrapolation of benefits to human consumers scientifically premature, regardless of how compelling the mechanism sounds in theory. The global kombucha market exceeded $3.5 billion in 2023. Premium brands retail at $4 to $8 per bottle. The marketing language consistently positions kombucha adjacent to clinical health outcomes without making FTC actionable direct drug claims, using terms like supports gut health that require no substantiation to print on a label under current supplement regulations. The FDA issued a safety advisory in 1995 following reports of serious illness, including one death linked to home-brewed kombucha. Commercially produced kombucha under sanitary conditions carries lower risk. You paid $6 for fermented tea because it supports gut health, a phrase that costs nothing to write on a bottle. The bacteria in a $1 cup of yogurt has a more substantial clinical record. The kombucha bottle is unquestionably more photogenic. That distinction is load-bearing in this transaction. 39. You bought the resistance band fitness kit because the infomercial showed real transformations in real people who had used exactly this system for exactly 20 minutes a day. And the combination of a specific time commitment and visible results creates a purchase trigger that exercise science and marketing science have very different opinions about. Resistance bands are a legitimate training tool with genuine utility in physical therapy and sports conditioning. The lie is not the bands. The lie is the timeline and the outcome framing applied to them in the consumer kit context. Before and after transformation photography used in fitness product advertising has been documented to involve professional photographers, optimized lighting, dehydration protocols before the after shot, posture coaching, and in some cases, different models for before and after entirely. The FTC requires advertisers to disclose atypical results, a requirement inconsistently enforced across this product category. Exercise science is unambiguous that meaningful body composition change, visible to the naked eye, requires months of consistent training combined with dietary adjustment. No 20-minute resistance band program produces visible transformation in weeks for a general population starting point under honest photographic conditions. The as seen on television fitness product category generates billions annually and operates with a return rate that brands factor into unit economics. The product is priced, knowing that a significant percentage of buyers will attempt a return and that a meaningful subset will not complete the return process. Keep the bands, throw away the timeline. The bands were never the problem. 40, you wore the Uggs because they felt like wearing a warm cloud, and someone you admired was photographed wearing them. And the combination of comfort and social endorsement is essentially the complete formula for a footwear purchase decision at any price point. The American Podiatric Medical Association has not awarded its seal of acceptance to the UGG Classic Clog. Multiple podiatric physicians have noted in published interviews and clinical literature that the flat, soft sole and absence of structural arch support makes sheepskin boots inappropriate for all-day, everyday wear, beyond the comfort of the first hour. A 2010 study from the University of Queensland found that among regular wearers of UGG-style boots, a significant percentage showed abnormal overpronation, inward rolling of the foot, compared to wearers of structured footwear, a biomechanical pattern associated with plantar fasciitis and knee stress over time. Decker's Outdoor Corporation, which owns the UGG brand, generated approximately $1.7 billion in revenue in 2022. The brand's growth was driven almost entirely by celebrity visibility and fashion positioning, not functional footwear claims. Sheepskin's thermal properties are genuine. The material regulates temperature and wicks moisture effectively. The short-term comfort is completely real. The structural deficiencies become relevant over hours of standing and walking, which is a timeline the initial sensation does not prepare you for. They feel like a warm cloud. They work like a warm cloud. Beautiful for the first hour. Insufficient for everything your foot actually needs after that. 41. You paid for the alkaline water because the pH number on the label looked like a data point, and a data point feels like evidence, and evidence feels like justification, even when the data point being cited describes a property that your digestive system eliminates within seconds of you swallowing the product. Your stomach produces hydrochloric acid at a pH of approximately 1.5 to 3.5. Any water you consume passes through this environment, where its alkalinity is immediately neutralized before reaching your bloodstream or any other tissue the marketing is implying the pH will influence. The human body maintains blood pH within a range of 7.3, 5 to 7.45 through powerful buffering systems that operate continuously and do not require your beverage choices to function. Premium alkaline water brands including Essentia, Evamore, and Kangen water retail at $2 to $10 or more per bottle. Home ionizing machines that produce alkaline water retail for $1,000 to $5,000. The global alkaline water market exceeded $1.3 billion in 2022. A 2016 review in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition found that while limited evidence exists for alkaline water benefits in acid reflux management, the broader anti-aging, cancer prevention, and metabolism claims have no substantiated basis in the research available. You paid $5 for water at a different number on the pH scale. Your stomach converted it to acid within seconds of arrival. The water had a brief and uneventful visit. Your blood pH was unmoved by the entire experience. It always is. That is precisely the point. 42. You bought the copper-infused compression gear because the word copper added something that sounded measurable and scientific to a product category. Compression garments that already had legitimate evidence behind it, and the addition of a real element from the periodic table to a real therapeutic concept produced a hybrid that felt more credible than either component justified separately. The FTC issued warning letters to multiple copper-infused garment companies in 2015, including Tommy Copper, for making unsupported health claims. Tommy Copper subsequently settled with the FTC for $1.35 million in consumer refunds for claims the evidence did not support. Compression garments without copper do have a legitimate evidence base for improving circulation and reducing muscle soreness, particularly for DVT prevention and post-exercise recovery. The compression is doing the documented work. The copper adds cost, not efficacy. Copper does have medically documented antimicrobial and antifungal properties. Copper surfaces kill bacteria on contact in hospital settings at specific concentrations. The concentration of copper oxide integrated into fabric yarn is orders of magnitude below the concentrations required to produce meaningful antimicrobial effects under any reasonable use condition. The copper compression garment market commands a 50 to 200% premium over equivalent non-copper compression products. You paid $60 for a sock because someone printed the word copper on it. The compression part works. The copper part works on doorknobs and hospital rails. At concentrations your sock will never reach. You purchased the periodic table as a marketing strategy and received a sock. 43. You paid for the hydrogen water because molecular hydrogen sounded precise and scientific, and the people promoting it cited actual research from actual journals, and actual research from actual journals is a level of citation. Most supplement categories don't bother with, which created a false sense that the category had cleared a bar it had actually just located and pointed at from a distance. The maximum concentration of hydrogen gas that can be maintained dissolved in water at atmospheric pressure is approximately 1.6 parts per million. Most commercial hydrogen water products fall at or below this threshold. Upon opening the container, dissolved hydrogen begins escaping immediately due to the pressure differential between the sealed product and ambient air. Your gut microbiome produces hydrogen gas through fermentation of dietary fiber at rates estimated at hundreds to thousands of times the amount present in a single serving of hydrogen water. Your body is already operating a hydrogen production system at industrial scale relative to anything a beverage contributes. Some preliminary research, primarily from Japanese researchers with documented financial interests in hydrogen water technology, suggests potential antioxidant properties in cell culture studies. Large-scale, human randomized controlled trial evidence for the specific consumer benefits marketed is essentially absent. Premium hydrogen water products retail at $3 to $8 per can. Hydrogen water generators and machines retail for $300 to $2,000. You paid $5 for water carrying a gas that was leaving the bottle before you finished opening it. The hydrogen had places to be. Your wallet did not follow it out. 44. You took the ginkgo biloba every morning for years because you had read that it supports memory and cognitive function, and supporting memory felt like the kind of maintenance investment a prudent person makes before the problem arrives rather than after, which is a reasonable philosophy applied to a supplement whose primary supporting trial cost $30 million and concluded it does not work. The Ginkgo Evaluation of Memory Study, a $30 million NIH-funded randomized controlled trial involving 3,069 participants aged 75 and older and followed for approximately 6 years, found that ginkgo biloba supplementation had no significant effect on the rate of cognitive decline or the development of dementia compared to placebo. This was not a small pilot study conducted over 8 weeks by a manufacturer. This was the government spending $30 million to answer the question directly. Ginkgo biloba supplements generate approximately $250 million in United States annual sales and remain among the top-selling herbal supplements on the market. The product is still marketed for memory and cognitive function despite the gem findings being publicly available for over 15 years. Ginkgo biloba does contain pharmacologically active compounds that affect platelet aggregation, creating a clinically relevant interaction risk with anticoagulants, including warfarin and aspirin. So it is not inert, just not effective for the purpose being sold. The government spent $30 million to find out definitively whether this supplement prevents memory loss. It does not. The supplement sells $250 million annually. One of those parties forgot the study happened. 45, you took the echinacea at the first sign of a cold because it was in every pharmacy, endorsed by the packaging's confident clinical language, and the folk medicine tradition behind it was old enough that its persistence across generations felt like evidence of something, which is exactly the kind of reasoning that survives because it is never tested right up until someone tests it. A double-blind, placebo-controlled study published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2005 directly exposed 399 healthy volunteers to rhinovirus, the actual virus that causes the common cold, and then treated groups with different echinacea preparations, or placebo. Results showed no significant difference in infection rates or symptom severity between echinacea groups and placebo. This was not an indirect measurement or a self-reported outcome. Researchers gave people the cold and waited. The echinacea was present for the entire experiment. The cold came anyway, on schedule, indifferent to the supplement. A 2015 Cochrane systematic review analyzing 24 randomized trials and 4,631 participants found that evidence for echinacea's effects on cold prevention and treatment was inconsistent and generally not statistically significant across available research. The United States echinacea supplement market generates approximately $130 million annually. The plant's centuries of folk use provide cultural authority that has survived decades of negative clinical findings, because emotional credibility and evidential credibility are different categories, and the supplement industry only needs one of them. You still buy it every November. The most definitive study on echinacea deliberately gave people colds and watched. The echinacea watched with them. 46. You made the detox water, put the cucumber and lemon slices in the glass pitcher, photographed it on the counter because it looked exactly like wellness is supposed to look, and drank it throughout the day, feeling the specific satisfaction of someone who is doing something right, which is a feeling the product reliably delivers, and the only feeling it is physiologically capable of delivering. The micronutrient transfer from fruit and vegetables soaking in water for several hours is nutritionally negligible compared to actually consuming the fruit or vegetable. Most vitamins do not leach meaningfully into water through the intact skin of produce at room temperature over a few hours of infusion. The claimed mechanisms, detoxification, metabolism acceleration, body alkalization, reflect no physiological process that cucumber water triggers. Drinking plain water is associated with modest increases in resting metabolic rate due to thermogenesis during water processing. This effect belongs to the water, not to what was floating in it. The wellness market around infused water generates tens of millions in associated product sales annually. Fruit infuser bottles retail at $15 to $40. Wellness books dedicate chapters to infusion recipes, and the aesthetic has produced hundreds of millions of social media impressions. You put a lemon in a jug and called it a protocol. The water was doing the work before the lemon arrived. The lemon got the credit, the Instagram caption, and the infuser bottle purchase. You paid $35 for a strainer to facilitate an arrangement that benefits only the lemon. 47. You gave yourself or your child the melatonin gummy because it was at the pharmacy checkout. The dose sounded reasonable on the package, and the gummy format made the decision feel nutritional rather than pharmaceutical, which is a distinction the packaging was carefully designed to blur. A landmark 2022 JAMA study analyzed 25 commercially available melatonin gummy products and found that 88% contained significantly more melatonin than their labels stated, with products ranging from 74% to 347% of the labeled dose. One product labeled at 1.5 milligrams contained 8.85 milligrams of actual melatonin, nearly 6 times the stated amount. The human body produces melatonin naturally in quantities of 0.1 to 0.5 milligrams nightly. Research by MIT's Dr. Richard Wertman, who helped pioneer melatonin pharmacology, suggested that 0.3 milligrams, a fraction of any commercial dose, is sufficient to raise blood melatonin to normal nighttime levels. Higher doses may desensitize melatonin receptors over time. Poison control centers across the United States reported a nearly 530% increase in melatonin ingestion calls involving children between 2012 and 2021. Melatonin is classified as a dietary supplement in the United States, meaning dosing standards are not enforced by the FDA at the manufacturing level before the product ships. You gave yourself or your child up to 3 times more of a hormone than the label claimed, which was already 10 to 30 times what the body requires. The gummy looked like candy. The label was optimistic. The actual dose was supervised by no one. 48. You bought the raw dog food because domestication felt like a compromise. Your dog's biology had never fully accepted, and feeding an animal in a way that honored its ancestral self seemed like the kind of responsible ownership that regular kibble was too convenient and too processed to represent. The FDA tested 196 samples of raw pet food between 2010 and 2012 and found that 15% were positive for salmonella, a significantly higher contamination rate than other pet food categories, and that raw-fed pets shed salmonella in their stool at higher rates, creating household transmission risk for the humans sharing the home. Domestic dogs diverged from wolves approximately 15,000 to 40,000 years ago, evolving alongside human agriculture. Genetic research has confirmed that domestic dogs developed additional copies of the amylase gene, improving starch digestion, a direct genetic divergence from wolf physiology that specifically undermines the feed them like a wolf premise at the molecular level. Nutritional analysis of commercial raw diets has found that many do not meet AAFCO nutritional standards for complete and balanced nutrition, with documented deficiencies in calcium, vitamin D, and other nutrients. The raw pet food market generates approximately $750 million annually in the United States, at a significant premium above conventional pet food. Your dog evolved away from wolves while living next to your grain storage for 40,000 years. You spent $12 a pound to feed it like an apex predator it genetically stopped being before the first pyramid was built. The wolf does not have a vet either. 49. You spent $200 on the pillow because the box described it as clinical and orthopedic, and the diagram showed precisely where your cervical spine would be supported relative to your shoulder width, and diagrams with labeled anatomy are doing persuasive work that the underlying evidence cannot independently support. The term orthopedic, as applied to consumer pillows, has no regulatory definition and no clinical certification requirement attached to it. The International Chiropractors Association does not operate a formal consumer pillow certification program. Chiropractor-recommended language on pillow packaging typically reflects individual practitioner quotes, obtained with permission, not institutional endorsement from any governing professional body. A 2020 systematic review in Sleep Medicine Reviews examined evidence for pillow design effects on neck pain and sleep quality, and found that evidence quality was generally low to moderate, with significant variation in outcomes across individual sleepers, making population-level design recommendations scientifically unsupported. Consumer pillow prices range from $10 to over $300. Independent consumer testing organizations have not consistently found correlations between price and objective sleep quality measures across the categories they have evaluated. Pillow preference is highly individual, determined by sleep position, shoulder width, mattress firmness, and personal comfort tolerance developed over a lifetime of sleeping. No single clinical design has been demonstrated superior across a broad population. The box said clinical. The clinical part was the font choice. Your neck will tell you what it needs for free if you give it a few nights. It has always known. You needed the box to provide permission to pay attention. 50. You bought the Goop product, the jade egg, the crystal water bottle, the proximity to the entire Goop aesthetic of expensive self-knowledge. Because the brand had constructed a version of wellness that felt like it was for intelligent women who had done their research. And being positioned as that person is worth something that a regular health claim cannot deliver. Goop's $66 jade egg was marketed with claims it could balance hormones, regulate menstrual cycles, and increase chai energy through vaginal insertion. Dr. Jen Gunter, an OB/GYN with relevant clinical expertise, publicly detailed why these claims were medically unsupported and why a porous stone wore an internally created, documented infection risk. The Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office and 9 other California District Attorney offices filed suit against Goop LLC in 2018. Goop settled for $145,000 and was required to substantiate health claims going forward. The jade eggs are no longer sold with the original claims. Goop generated approximately $250 million in annual revenue at its peak and received investment at a valuation reflecting that figure. Netflix produced a documentary series. The broader product category Goop exemplifies, expensive wellness items sold with implied scientific credibility and premium aesthetic positioning, remains one of the fastest growing segments of the alternative health market. A $66 stone marketed with hormone balancing claims was investigated by 10 district attorney offices. The stone is still a stone. The hormone was never part of the transaction. You can buy the same jade at a craft store for $4 and name it yourself. 51. You took the biotin supplement every morning in the 5,000 microgram capsule because thicker hair felt like a reasonable and achievable goal, and the supplement aisle's confident labeling made biotin deficiency sound like a plausible explanation for something that was almost certainly not caused by biotin deficiency. Biotin deficiency, the condition that biotin supplementation actually treats, is extremely rare in the general population. The recommended daily adequate intake for biotin is 30 micrograms. Standard biotin beauty supplements contain 5,000 to 10,000 micrograms, representing 167 to 333 times the adequate intake. A 2017 review published in Skin Appendage Disorders examined all published studies on biotin for hair loss and found that every study showing positive results involved confirmed biotin deficiency. No study demonstrated benefit in subjects who were not deficient. In people with adequate biotin levels, which is nearly everyone reading this, supplementing additional biotin produces no documented hair or nail outcome. The FDA issued a safety communication in 2017 warning that high-dose biotin supplementation can significantly interfere with laboratory diagnostic tests, including troponin tests used to diagnose heart attacks, potentially producing falsely normal results in patients experiencing actual cardiac events. The biotin supplement market generates approximately $350 million annually in the United States, marketed almost entirely through before and after social media content, despite no mechanism by which excess biotin in a replete individual produces cosmetic results. You are taking 300 times what your body needs of a vitamin you almost certainly are not deficient in. The main documented effect is that it might confuse your cardiac test. The hair was not consulted in any part of this arrangement. 52. You drank the activated charcoal lemonade because black food is counterintuitive enough to signal sophistication, and the mechanism, toxin adsorption, sounded like chemistry you remembered from somewhere legitimate, which made the $9 juice feel like a transaction with science, rather than a transaction with a juice bar's marketing consultant. Activated charcoal does have a legitimate medical application: emergency poison treatment administered in a hospital within 1 hour of toxic ingestion at specific doses for specific compounds. That is the clinical context. The consumer wellness context shares only the ingredient. Activated charcoal toothpaste is abrasive. It physically scours enamel to create a temporary whitening effect that accelerates enamel erosion with regular use, making teeth more susceptible to permanent staining over time. The American Dental Association has not awarded its seal of acceptance to any activated charcoal dental product. Activated charcoal's adsorptive properties do not distinguish between harmful compounds and beneficial ones. Consumed alongside medications, it can significantly reduce drug absorption, including birth control pills, blood pressure medications, and antidepressants. An interaction risk printed on no wellness juice label. Activated charcoal in beverages does not meaningfully adsorb alcohol, which is absorbed faster than charcoal acts at the concentrations present in a retail drink. The emergency room uses this ingredient for actual poisoning. You put it in a smoothie. The dosage, the timing, and the clinical context matter enormously. Only one of those situations had all three. 53. You bought the Activia because the actress in the advertisement spoke with the calm authority of someone who had personally resolved a digestive problem through consistent yogurt consumption, and a celebrity describing a specific bodily improvement in a specific product in a specific time frame is a testimonial format that your brain processes as evidence, even when it is legally classified as something else entirely. Dannon settled a $45 million class action lawsuit in 2010 over claims that Activia yogurt and Dan Active dairy drink provided specific, clinically proven digestive and immune benefits that the evidence did not support at the level that advertising implied. The FTC simultaneously reached a settlement requiring Dannon to either stop making the specific claims or substantiate them with competent scientific evidence. The specific probiotic strains in branded yogurts, marketed under trademark names like Bifidus regularis, are real bacterial strains with some research support. The issue is the magnitude and specificity of claims made to consumers relative to the evidence strength for those strains at yogurt serving concentrations. Most yogurt labeled contains live and active cultures, provides broadly comparable probiotic benefit to store brand plain yogurt at a fraction of the premium price. You paid triple for yogurt, whose bacterial strain has a registered trademark and a television spokesperson. The bacteria in the store brand container was already doing its job. You were paying for the bacteria's publicist and the actress's rate card. 54. You bought the Himalayan salt lamp because the warm amber glow was genuinely beautiful, and the negative ion claims gave you permission to buy something beautiful by recategorizing it as a health decision, which is one of the most durable purchase justification strategies the wellness industry has ever discovered, and one it deploys across dozens of product categories with consistent success. The negative ion emission from Himalayan salt lamps has been independently measured and found to be negligible, far below the ion concentrations required to produce any of the claimed physiological effects, even in a small room. Research published in BMC Psychiatry established that high-density negative ionization at approximately 100,000 ions per cubic centimeter has evidence for antidepressant effects in seasonal affective disorder. Salt lamps produce ion concentrations orders of magnitude below this threshold under normal operating conditions. The FDA has not cleared Himalayan salt lamps as medical devices. Any lamp marketed for specific health benefits, such as asthma relief or allergy reduction, would technically require FDA clearance as a medical device. Clearance none of these consumer products have pursued. The salt lamp market generates approximately $300 million annually in the United States. Independent consumer testing has confirmed that the measurable ion output of these lamps is insufficient to alter the ion balance of a typical indoor space. The lamp is genuinely pretty. The mood it creates is real. Both of those things come from the light, not the ions. You bought a nightlight with a geology backstory and a health claim requiring 100,000 times more output than the lamp produces. 55. You paid for the smart water because the word smart was right there on the bottle, and vapor distilled sounded like a process that had added something rather than removed things, and then put a fraction of them back. And the combination of a reassuring adjective and a technical process description is a labeling strategy that sells water at a markup your municipality cannot compete with. Smart Water's electrolyte content includes approximately 10 milligrams of calcium, 3.7 milligrams of magnesium, and 2.5 milligrams of potassium per liter. The daily recommended intake of potassium is 4,700 milligrams. 1 liter of smart water provides approximately 0.05% of your daily potassium requirement. Vapor distillation is a legitimate purification process that effectively removes contaminants. However, many municipal water systems already meet or exceed federal safety standards without this process. You are paying to have your water's existing safety recreated through a more expensive industrial method, and then have a fractional mineral content added back in amounts your body cannot meaningfully detect. Smart Water is owned by Coca-Cola, which acquired the Glaceo portfolio in 2007 for $4.1 billion. Smart Water is among the top-selling bottled water brands in the United States, generating hundreds of millions in annual revenue. The marketing has historically featured Jennifer Aniston, whose specific physiological relationship to the electrolyte content of the product was not part of the campaign disclosure. They removed minerals from water, added a homeopathic amount back, charged $250, and put a celebrity on it. The water was water the entire time. 56. You bought the testosterone booster because the label read like a clinical intervention. Specific ingredient names, dosage figures, mechanism language, and that vocabulary creates a confidence the underlying evidence does not generate. When you read the studies the ingredients actually appear in. A 2019 study published in the World Journal of Men's Health analyzed the 50 top-selling testosterone supplement products and found that only 24.8% had any clinical trial evidence supporting their ingredients' use for testosterone elevation. Of those with some evidence, many studies were funded by manufacturers or carried serious methodological limitations that prevented reliable conclusions. D-aspartic acid, one of the most commonly marketed testosterone booster ingredients, showed initial promise in a small 2009 study. A subsequent 2013 randomized controlled trial found no significant difference in testosterone levels between D-aspartic acid supplementation and placebo in resistance-trained men, the exact population the product targets. Tribulus terrestris has failed to demonstrate significant testosterone elevating effects in multiple human clinical trials, including a well-controlled 2005 study of elite athletes. The United States testosterone booster supplement market generates approximately $1.3 billion annually. Actual testosterone deficiency is a legitimate medical condition treated with prescription therapy under physician supervision, a clinical distinction the supplement marketing deliberately and consistently blurs. You bought a capsule of fenugreek and expected your endocrine system to respond. The endocrine system requires a prescription to be significantly altered. The supplement aisle and the endocrine system are not in communication with each other. 57. You downloaded the 7-Minute Workout app because a New York Times article said science had compressed fitness into 7 minutes. And science compressing fitness into 7 minutes is the kind of headline that the part of your brain responsible for exercise avoidance reads with the relief of a problem finally solved. The original 2013 paper, published in the American College of Sports Medicine's Health and Fitness Journal, described the scientific 7-minute workout as a high-intensity circuit designed for already fit individuals, supplementing an existing fitness routine. The authors explicitly positioned it as a time-efficient option for people who might have only a brief window available, not as a complete, standalone fitness program replacing conventional training. The app category that exploded following the Times article generated tens of millions in downloads and revenue, with premium apps charging $40 to $100 annually in subscription fees for content built on a research paper whose authors said something meaningfully different than the apps implied. Exercise science requires adequate volume, progressive overload, and recovery for meaningful physical adaptation. 7 minutes of bodyweight circuit training performed consistently will maintain baseline fitness in sedentary individuals. It will not produce the cardiovascular, strength, or body composition adaptations shown in 45 to 60-minute training protocols. 7 minutes was a paragraph in an academic journal. America heard it as permission to stop. The body did not receive the same communication. 7 minutes is a warm-up with a publicist. 58. You bought the thermogenic fat burner because the mechanism was real. The thermic effect of specific compounds on metabolic rate is documented in peer-reviewed literature. And a real mechanism is the most effective foundation for a supplement claim because it gives you something accurate to cite, while the magnitude of the effect does the fraudulent work quietly in the background. Green tea extract and caffeine, two of the most evidence-supported thermogenic ingredients, increase energy expenditure by approximately 3 to 4% above baseline, according to meta-analyses of available research. At a 2,000 calorie daily burn, this represents 60 to 80 additional calories, roughly equivalent to a small handful of crackers. The marketing extrapolates this minor arithmetic into transformation-level body composition outcomes that the caloric math cannot produce under any honest scenario. L-carnitine, widely marketed as a fat transporter that moves fatty acids into mitochondria for burning, is synthesized by the body in quantities sufficient for normal function. Meta-analyses of L-carnitine supplementation show no significant effect on body composition in non-deficient adults. The fat burner supplement category generates approximately $1.3 billion annually in the United States. Ephedra, the most pharmacologically effective thermogenic ingredient, was banned by the FDA in 2004 due to cardiovascular risk. The post-ephedra category replaced it with less effective ingredients and kept the same transformative marketing claims without adjustment. The thermogenic effect is real. It is 60 calories. The transformation on the packaging required a photographer, a diet, months of structured training, and a lighting decision. The supplement was present. It was not responsible. 59. You paid double for the clinical strength deodorant. Wait, you already know this one, because it appeared at item 18, and the fact that the category is large enough and the marketing confident enough that it could plausibly appear twice in the same list, without you immediately noticing, is itself the point the product is making about how you process the word clinical in a consumer context. 59. You subscribe to the brain training app because the dashboard showed your scores improving week over week, and improving scores feel like improving cognition, which is the core confusion the entire category depends on, and the specific misunderstanding the FTC paid $2 million to formally identify and penalize. The FTC fined Lumos Labs, maker of Lumosity, $2 million in January 2016 for deceptive advertising after finding no credible scientific evidence that its games produced the broad cognitive transfer benefits claimed in marketing materials, including claims about dementia prevention and real-world cognitive improvement. A 2016 consensus statement signed by 73 cognitive scientists and neuroscientists in psychological science in the public interest concluded that claims of broad cognitive improvement from brain training apps go beyond what the evidence supports. The scientific concept at issue is far transfer, the ability of narrow cognitive training in one domain to produce improvements in unrelated cognitive domains. Practice effects, meaning getting better at specific brain training games through repetition, are well documented and reliably produced. Whether game performance improvement reflects real-world cognitive enhancement is the question the science consistently answers in the negative. Lumosity had approximately 70 million registered users at its peak. You got very good at Lumosity. Lumosity is a game. Getting better at a game is not the same as getting smarter. The government spent $2 million in legal resources to explain this to the company. The app is still installed on your phone. 60, you bought the collagen powder because the mechanism seemed to complete itself. You consume collagen, your body uses collagen. Therefore, consuming collagen goes to your body's collagen. And that logical chain is so satisfying that examining what actually happens between steps 2 and 3 feels almost pedantic until you realize step 2.5 is where your entire investment disappears. When you consume collagen protein, digestive enzymes break it into individual amino acids and dipeptides, the same building blocks produced by digesting any other protein source. Your body distributes these amino acids based on overall metabolic priorities, not based on the tissue they originally came from or the marketing claim on the container they arrived in. The global collagen supplement market exceeded $8 billion in 2023. Products range from $20 to over $100 per month. The marketing consistently implies a direct delivery pipeline from ingested collagen to facial skin, which is not how protein metabolism operates in any described biological system. Some clinical studies do show modest improvements in skin hydration and elasticity with collagen peptide supplementation. A 2019 systematic review found generally positive but limited evidence, with many studies funded by collagen manufacturers and conducted on small sample sizes. Vitamin C is essential for your body's own collagen synthesis through a well-understood metabolic pathway available to anyone consuming adequate dietary protein and citrus. You blended $60 of protein into your coffee to fix your face. Your digestive system disassembled it and sent the parts to wherever it needed them. Your face may or may not have been on the priority list that morning. 61. You bought the fasting supplement because you were committed to the protocol. The protocol was working, and supplementing something you were already doing correctly felt like the responsible optimization of an investment you had already made in your own discipline, which is a psychologically coherent position and a physiologically self-defeating one simultaneously. The metabolic benefits attributed to intermittent fasting, reduced insulin levels, increased fat oxidation, autophagy activation, are produced by the fasted state itself, specifically by the sustained absence of caloric intake and the hormonal environment that absence creates. Introducing exogenous compounds during the fasting window disrupts this state regardless of how the supplement is marketed. Exogenous ketone supplements, heavily promoted to fasting practitioners, do elevate blood ketone levels, but have not been shown to replicate the broader metabolic effects of endogenous ketosis achieved through actual dietary restriction. The fasting supplement category generates hundreds of millions in annual sales. It is a supplement category designed for an intervention whose mechanism depends on not consuming supplements, which is either the most ironic product category in the wellness industry or the most honest demonstration of how the industry operates when it finds a trend with disposable income attached to it. Branched-chain amino acid supplements marketed as fasting safe have been shown in research to stimulate insulin secretion and activate signaling pathways that interrupt autophagy. They sold you a supplement for not eating. The supplement is something you eat. The market responded with hundreds of millions of dollars of agreement. 62. You wore the waist trainer because the before and after photographs showed a measurable difference. The celebrity who promoted it had a body you found aspirational, and the compression itself produced an immediate visible result that your mirror confirmed, which is a feedback loop so fast and so satisfying that the question of what happens when you take it off gets deferred indefinitely. The American Board of Cosmetic Surgery has stated that waist trainers cannot permanently change the body's shape. Any waist reduction observed during wear is purely compressive. Tissues return to their baseline dimensions after the garment is removed because compression does not alter bone structure, fat distribution, or connective tissue architecture. Historical use of tight-lacing corsets in the Victorian era produced documented medical complications, including displaced organs, deformed rib cages, and compromised breathing capacity. Modern medical literature notes that the same risks apply to contemporary waist trainers worn for extended daily periods under the same physical principles. The thermal spot reduction mechanism, the idea that neoprene heat burns underlying fat, has no physiological basis. Sweating in a specific area increases localized water loss, producing temporary circumference reduction that reverses completely with rehydration. The waist trainer market generates approximately $100 million annually in the United States. The before and after images are typically photographed with and without the garment rather than before and after a weight loss timeline. You compressed your midsection, measured it compressed, and called that a result. Your organs were displaced 3 inches to the left and had different feelings about the methodology. 63. You used the whitening strips because the shade comparison chart on the box showed your starting shade and your projected ending shade, and the distance between those 2 points looked achievable and worth the $50 investment, which is the only part of the strip's promise that operates without significant qualification in the fine print. Over-the-counter whitening strips use hydrogen peroxide at concentrations legally capped at 10% in the United States. Professional dental treatments use 25 to 40% concentrations with protective measures for gum tissue. The results are categorically different in depth, speed, and longevity, and the marketing imagery uses the highest possible before and after contrast achievable, typically combined with professional photography conditions. Tooth sensitivity following whitening strip use is reported by approximately 78% of users in clinical studies, according to research published in the Journal of Dentistry. The peroxide penetrates enamel tubules and temporarily irritates the dental pulp, producing sensitivity that can persist for days after the treatment period. The American Dental Association notes that overuse of whitening strips causes enamel erosion, permanently increasing tooth sensitivity and susceptibility to future staining, a counterproductive long-term outcome for a whitening product used repeatedly. The global teeth whitening market exceeds $6 billion annually. Premium strip brands retail at $40 to $60 for a multi-week treatment. You put 10% peroxide on your teeth, experienced sensitivity, and got half the result a dentist produces in an hour. The strip costs $55. The before and after on the box was a professional production. Your teeth are doing their reasonable best. 64. You paid for the juice cleanse because the language around it, reset, restore, allow your organs to rest, implied that your digestive system had been working so hard that it deserved a vacation, and the idea of giving your organs a vacation is one of the most emotionally resonant wellness concepts ever constructed, despite having no basis in how organs function. Your liver processes approximately 1.4 liters of blood per minute continuously regardless of whether your dietary input is solid or liquid. There is no physiological mechanism by which consuming juice instead of whole food rests the liver. The liver's detoxification function operates based on blood composition, not on the mechanical workload of your digestive tract processing solids. A multi-day juice cleanse typically delivers 1,000 to 1,200 calories daily in primarily simple sugars. The rapid weight loss, often 3 to 7 pounds, results from glycogen depletion and associated fluid loss, both of which reverse completely within days of returning to normal eating patterns. Premium juice cleanse programs retail at $60 to $100 per day, up to $700 for a week-long program. A 2015 pilot study examining 3-day juice cleanses involved 20 participants, no control group, and self-reported outcomes. The entirety of the direct human evidence base for the category. You spent $500 to drink cold-pressed sugar water for 5 days, lost 5 pounds of water weight, and felt lighter until lunch on day 6. Your liver filed no paperwork during the cleanse period. It was managing its usual workload with no juice required. 65. You switched to the grain-free dog food because the logic imported cleanly from human nutrition trends. Grains are inflammatory, processed carbohydrates are problematic, ancestral diets are superior, and your dog was right there, unable to advocate for its own nutritional needs, which made applying your dietary philosophy to its bowl feel like an act of care rather than an act of projection. The FDA launched an investigation in 2018 into a potential link between grain-free diets and dilated cardiomyopathy in dogs, a serious and potentially fatal heart condition. As of 2020, the FDA had received over 1,100 reports of DCM in dogs eating grain-free diets with legumes as primary ingredients. Domestic dogs evolved significant starch digesting capability through amylase gene duplication that wolves lack entirely, a genetic adaptation developed over 15,000 to 40,000 years of coevolution with human agricultural practices. The most frequent dietary allergens in dogs are beef, chicken, dairy, and egg, not grains. The primary grains in commercial dog food, including rice, corn, and oats, are rarely implicated in canine food sensitivity cases. The grain-free pet food market generated approximately $2.5 billion annually at its peak, built almost entirely on the transfer of human dietary trends onto pet nutrition. Without the scientific foundation, those human trends themselves lacked. You fed your dog your philosophy. The dog's genome has a different opinion. The FDA is now investigating what you replace the grain with, and the dog would simply like the food that works. 66. You sat in the oxygen bar chair, put on the cannula, breathed the flavored oxygen for 20 minutes, and felt something. A clarity, a lightness, a sense of having done something good for yourself, which is a real feeling produced by a real experience and attributable almost entirely to sitting quietly for 20 minutes while something pleasant happens near your face. A healthy person's blood oxygen saturation is already 95 to 99% under normal breathing conditions, effectively at the maximum carrying capacity of hemoglobin under standard physiological parameters. Hemoglobin is the protein that carries oxygen in red blood cells, and at 95 to 99% saturation, there are essentially no additional hemoglobin molecules available to bind additional oxygen. Breathing higher concentration oxygen cannot meaningfully increase tissue oxygen delivery in a healthy individual beyond this baseline, because the transport system is already operating at capacity. The FDA issued a warning in 2002 that oxygen bars are not FDA-approved medical devices and that operators may not make health claims, noting that breathing high-concentration oxygen from unsupervised sources carries risks of oxygen toxicity, fire hazard, and contamination from improperly maintained equipment. Oxygen bars became a trend in the mid-1990s, initially in high-altitude tourist areas where genuine altitude-related hypoxia provided a physiological rationale. The concept then migrated to sea-level urban environments, where that rationale evaporated entirely. You paid $25 to breathe air that is better than air in a location where the air is already completely adequate. Your blood was at 98% before you sat down. It was at 98% when you left. The lavender scent was extra. 67. You bought the infrared sauna blanket because the research on sauna benefits is real and accessible, and the blanket was a fraction of the cost of a dedicated sauna room. And the gap between what the research studied and what the blanket delivers is the gap between a finding and a product, which the wellness industry has learned to cross without leaving a trail. The clinical associations between regular sauna use and reduced cardiovascular risk come primarily from Finnish population studies examining conventional convective heat sauna use 4 to 7 times weekly for 20 or more minutes. These studies involve full-body exposure in purpose-built rooms, not a fabric shell that encases the body while the head remains at room temperature. Infrared sauna blankets retail at $150 to $600. The infrared wavelengths they emit penetrate soft tissue to a depth of a few centimeters, a claimed advantage over conventional sauna heat that has not been validated in any clinical outcomes research specific to the blanket format. Sweating during any heat exposure produces water and sodium loss. It does not produce meaningful toxin elimination. Your kidneys remove metabolic waste. Your sweat glands regulate temperature. Those are different functions performed by different organs, and the word detox does not merge them. The wellness influencer market drove sauna blanket sales dramatically between 2020 and 2023. The research you are mentally citing when you use the blanket was conducted in a room in Finland with fundamentally different physics. You are warm and damp inside a bag. Both of those things are true. Only one of them was in the study. 68. You bought the no sugar added product and felt the specific satisfaction of having navigated the grocery store's nutritional complexity with enough sophistication to distinguish a worse option from a better one, which is a real cognitive achievement, and also exactly the response the label was engineered to produce, regardless of what the nutrition panel underneath it says. No sugar added means no sugar was introduced during processing. It does not mean the product is low in sugar, low in carbohydrates, or metabolically favorable for people managing blood glucose or caloric intake. A product can carry the no sugar added label while containing 15 to 20 grams of naturally occurring sugars per serving from fruit, concentrate, dried fruit, or lactose present before processing began. Sugar alcohols used in no sugar added products as sweetness substitutes carry their own considerations. Maltitol has a glycemic index of approximately 52, not dramatically below table sugar's 65, and causes gastrointestinal distress, including bloating and diarrhea in significant quantities. The American Diabetes Association has noted that no sugar added labeling is commonly misinterpreted by people with diabetes as equivalent to sugar-free, a distinct regulatory category requiring below 0.5 grams of sugar per serving. The no sugar added product premium over standard versions averages 20 to 40% in most grocery categories. The label was written by a lawyer, not a nutritionist. The sugar arrived at the factory preloaded in the fruit. Nobody added it during processing. The sugar is still present. The distinction is technically accurate and practically misleading, and the premium you paid is for the misleading part. 69. You reached for the no sugar added cookie because the label made a technically accurate statement that your brain processed as a broader health claim, and technically accurate statements processed as broader health claims is the entire operational model of the packaged food industry's Better For You segment, running continuously and profitably since the moment regulators defined what manufacturers were not allowed to say. This item covered the no sugar added labeling category, which was addressed at item 68, so here instead is the anti-aging cream, which belongs here and deserves the space. You bought the department store anti-aging cream because the price was high enough to signal efficacy, the packaging was sophisticated enough to suggest pharmaceutical rigor, and the before and after imagery showed a difference your face was implicitly promised, and none of those three things have a regulatory requirement attached to them. The FDA classifies cosmetics as products affecting appearance and drugs as products affecting structure or function. A cream that genuinely reversed cellular aging would be a drug requiring clinical trial evidence and FDA approval, a process none of the products on any department store counter have completed. Prestige skincare generates approximately $17 billion annually in the United States. Consumer research consistently shows that price is the dominant heuristic for perceived efficacy in skincare. People report more benefit from more expensive products, regardless of active ingredient equivalents, to cheaper alternatives. A 2013 Consumer Reports analysis found that drugstore moisturizers performed comparably to prestige brands costing 10 times more on objective skin hydration and dermatologist assessment measures. The cream moisturizes your skin. That is legal and real. If it did what the name implies, it would need a prescription. The price is charging you for the implication. The jar is charging you for the jar. 70. You swallowed the probiotic supplement every morning because 50 billion colony-forming units sounds like an overwhelming biological reinforcement arriving to support a system that clearly needed help, and a number that large attached to something invisible. Doing something internal produces a confidence that the actual delivery mechanics of the product do not justify. A landmark 2018 study published in Cell by researchers at the Weizmann Institute found that following antibiotic treatment, people given probiotic supplements took significantly longer to restore their native gut microbiome than people who received no probiotics at all. The supplements actually delayed the recovery they were sold to support. Gastric acid has a pH of 1.5 to 3.5. Most bacterial species in probiotic supplements experience significant cell death transiting the stomach, and the majority of consumer products are not formulated with enteric coating that would improve survival rates through this environment. The probiotic supplement market generates approximately $7.5 billion annually in the United States. The CFU count on the label is a marketing number, without specifying strain, delivery mechanism, and target clinical condition. The figure is medically meaningless, regardless of how many zeros follow it. The strains with the strongest clinical evidence are very specific to very specific conditions. Broad claim probiotic marketing implies universal gut optimization that the narrow evidence base does not support. You swallowed 50 billion bacteria. Most of them died in your stomach. The survivors stayed briefly and departed when you stopped the subscription. Your gut has trillions of permanent residents who were not consulted during any of this. 71. You chose the mineral sunscreen because someone online explained that chemical sunscreens are absorbed into your bloodstream, and that absorbed means harmful. And absorbed meaning harmful is an inferential step that sounds like basic chemistry, but is actually the entire gap between a measured finding and a clinical conclusion. And the wellness industry lives in that gap and charges premium prices for the real estate. A 2020 FDA-sponsored study published in JAMA found that several chemical UV filters are absorbed into the bloodstream at concentrations exceeding the FDA's threshold for requiring further safety investigation. The FDA explicitly stated that this finding did not mean the products were unsafe, only that additional data was needed to characterize any potential risk. The American Academy of Dermatology has consistently maintained that the benefits of sunscreen use in preventing skin cancer are well established and outweigh theoretical risks from absorption that have not been demonstrated to cause harm in any human study. Oxybenzone, the most criticized chemical filter, is detectable in human blood and breast milk samples. The clinical significance of those concentrations has not been established in any peer-reviewed outcome study. Mineral sunscreens using zinc oxide and titanium dioxide have a strong safety profile and work effectively. Nanoparticle formulations of these same minerals, used to improve their cosmetic elegance, carry their own inhalation risk that the natural is safe framing consistently omits from consideration. One type of sunscreen might be absorbed in amounts requiring more study. The sun causes definitive, documented DNA damage every time you go outside without protection. Both facts are real. Only one of them is actively happening to your skin right now. 72. You stuck the ear seeds on the specific points of your outer ear because the auricular map looked precise. The practitioner placed them with confidence, and a diagram that's specific implies a corresponding specificity in the evidence, which is the visual vocabulary of science applied to a system whose foundational map was drawn by one French physician in 1957 and has never been confirmed by independent anatomical research. Auriculotherapy was systematized by Paul Noguier, a French physician who published his auricular correspondence map based on clinical observation rather than anatomical dissection or neurological mapping. The World Health Organization published an ear acupuncture point standardization document in 1990 But the underlying anatomical basis for point-to-organ correspondence has not been established through peer-reviewed anatomical or neuroscience research conducted by independent parties. A 2008 Cochrane review of auricular acupuncture for chronic pain found insufficient evidence to support its use. Subsequent systematic reviews across anxiety, insomnia, and addiction treatment found inconsistent results with high methodological risk across available studies. The ear does have a branch of the vagus nerve accessible at the concha region, providing a genuine neurological rationale for some auricular interventions. But this anatomical reality is not equivalent to validating the full organ correspondence map the seeds are being placed against. Ear seeds retail at $15 to $60 per pack. A French doctor drew a picture of an inverted fetus on an ear diagram in 1957. That is the map the seeds are navigating. The vagus nerve is real. The fetus map has not been confirmed by anyone who subsequently looked for it with the appropriate equipment. 73. You applied the clay mask because the word detoxifying was on the packaging, and your skin had been exposed to pollution and stress and the accumulation of modern life, and applying something to your face that claimed to remove the residue of all of that felt like the most accessible version of a reset available on a Tuesday evening for $30. The skin's barrier function, specifically the stratum corneum, is designed to prevent penetration of most substances in both directions, inward and outward. Systemic metabolic toxins are processed by the liver and eliminated through the kidneys and urine. The skin is not a meaningful toxin excretion pathway, and clay applied to the skin surface cannot access the systemic detoxification processes the marketing language implies. Bentonite clay does absorb organic compounds and minerals effectively. This is why it is used in industrial water treatment applications. At the skin surface, it absorbs sebum and dead skin cells with genuine efficacy. The clinical reach of this mechanism stops precisely at the skin surface. The global face mask market exceeds $10 billion annually, with detoxifying as one of the highest converting label descriptors in the category. Dermatologists recognize that clay masks provide genuine short-term pore appearance reduction and sebum control for oily skin types, a real cosmetic benefit that the product delivers honestly. The detoxification mechanism is the fabricated part, added to elevate the product from a cosmetic to a quasi-medical intervention in your mental accounting. The clay cleans your face effectively. The toxins are being managed by your liver, which accepts no applications from your skincare cabinet. 74. You bought the keto cookie because you were committed to the protocol. The protocol required avoiding certain things, and a packaged product promising to let you have the thing while avoiding the thing. It felt like the dietary equivalent of a solved problem, which is a feeling the packaged food industry can produce on demand and sell at a significant markup to anyone sufficiently motivated by the underlying restriction. Net carbs, the figure these products use to justify their keto-compatible claim, is a marketing construct, not an FDA-defined nutritional category. The FDA does not recognize net carbs on food labels. Manufacturers calculate them by subtracting fiber and sugar alcohols from total carbohydrates using whatever methodology produces the most favorable number for their product. Maltitol, the most commonly used sugar alcohol in packaged keto products due to its taste similarity to sugar, has a glycemic index of approximately 52, not dramatically lower than table sugar's 65, and is high enough to impair ketosis in sensitive individuals. The packaged keto food market grew from negligible to approximately $15 billion globally by 2023. The ketogenic diet has its strongest clinical evidence base for drug-resistant epilepsy in children managed under physician supervision. The version being sold in cookie form in the snack aisle is a commercial extrapolation of a therapeutic protocol that has very little to do with keto cookies. You went on a diet requiring you to stop eating processed food, then bought processed food with a math problem on the label. The maltitol's insulin response was not in the net carb calculation. 75. You bought the crystal because holding it felt like something, a warmth, a weight, a sense of connection to something older and slower than your current problems. And that felt like something is a real subjective experience that the crystal genuinely produces and that requires no healing frequency whatsoever to explain, which is the part of the transaction the receipt does not reflect. The United States crystal healing market generated approximately $1 billion annually by 2021. A 2001 controlled study published in the Journal of Scientific Exploration found that volunteers reported similar sensations from real crystals and fake plastic crystals with no statistically significant difference between groups. The sensations reported were consistent with suggestion and expectation rather than any measurable mineral property. The piezoelectric property of quartz, the ability to generate a small electrical charge under mechanical pressure, is real and is used in watches and electronic oscillators. Applying this industrial property to passive handholding in a wellness context requires inferential steps the physics does not support. Crystals are ethically complex in their sourcing. Significant quantities come from mines in Myanmar, Madagascar, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, with documented child labor and conflict mineral issues in the supply chain that the healing and love branding rarely addresses alongside the frequency claims. The crystal does not know you are holding it. Your expectation of the feeling is producing the feeling. The rock is a rock with excellent marketing, a complicated supply chain, and a gift shop presence that would have seemed remarkable to the geologist who identified the mineral. 76. You diffuse the essential oils because the lavender genuinely helped you relax, and the mechanism the company provided, therapeutic frequencies, cellular resonance, immune activation, gave you a scientific framework for a real effect. And having a scientific framework for a real effect is so satisfying that interrogating whether the framework matches the effect feels almost ungrateful. doTERRA and Young Living, the two largest essential oil MLM companies, received FDA warning letters in 2014 for making unsubstantiated medical claims, including claims that their products could treat Ebola, autism, and cancer. Combined annual revenue of these two companies exceeds $3 billion. The designation therapeutic grade, or certified pure therapeutic grade, is a trademark created by MLM companies, not a third-party regulatory standard or scientific certification issued by any government or independent scientific body. Some essential oil compounds do have documented pharmacological activity at specific concentrations. Linalool in lavender has mild anxiolytic properties in rodent models and limited human studies. The concentrations achieved through casual home diffusion are far below the doses used in published research, and most studies cannot rule out placebo effects from the pleasant sensory experience. Certain essential oils pose documented health risks when diffused in enclosed spaces with infants, children, or pets. Eucalyptus oil is toxic to cats. Tea tree oil is toxic to dogs. The lavender smell is relaxing. Smelling something pleasant is relaxing. Your brain understood this before anyone put it in a cold diffuser with a 2-hour auto shutoff and a therapeutic grade trademark. The Ebola claim was several steps past the lavender, and the FDA noticed. 77. You bought the red light therapy panel because the research on photobiomodulation is real. The clinical applications are expanding, and the panel manufacturer cited actual studies from actual institutions, which created a legitimate feeling bridge between what researchers found in controlled clinical settings and what you would achieve in your living room with a device whose irradiance specifications were written by the marketing department. Photobiomodulation research has produced genuine findings on wound healing, localized pain reduction, and some dermatological applications in controlled clinical settings with verified equipment parameters. The key variables in this research are irradiance measured in milliwatts per square centimeter, specific wavelength, treatment duration, and tissue depth, all of which vary dramatically between purpose-built clinical devices used in published studies and consumer panels sold online. Most consumer red light therapy panels do not publish verified irradiance specifications or provide the fluence data required to compare their output to the protocols used in the research they cite. Consumer panels retail at $200 to over $1,500. The market has grown exponentially between 2019 and 2024, driven primarily by podcast endorsements and biohacker promotion rather than peer-reviewed consumer device outcome data. The FDA's regulation of low-powered consumer panels classifies them as general wellness products rather than medical devices, meaning no efficacy evidence is required before the product ships and the research citations appear in the advertisement. The research is real. The research used devices with known, validated parameters. Your panel's specifications were written by someone other than the researcher. Both things shine red light. Only one of them was in the study. 78. You did the master cleanse because Beyoncé mentioned it. And Beyoncé mentioning something in the context of a physical transformation she achieved creates a cultural permission structure that 10 years of nutritional education cannot reliably dismantle in the moment you are standing in the grocery store, looking at cayenne pepper and maple syrup. The master cleanse produces rapid weight loss through starvation-level caloric restriction, delivering approximately 600 to 1,200 calories daily from simple sugars. All meaningful weight loss reverses when normal eating resumes because the loss is primarily glycogen depletion. Each gram of glycogen stores approximately 3 grams of water, and fluid loss, both of which restore completely within days. Beyoncé publicly credited the cleanse for a 20-pound loss for her 2006 film role and subsequently stated the weight returned immediately after resuming normal eating. Below 1,200 calories, the body preferentially catabolizes lean muscle mass for energy in addition to fat, reducing basal metabolic rate in a documented starvation response that makes subsequent weight maintenance harder, not easier. The Master Cleanse was created by Stanley Burroughs in 1941. Burroughs was convicted of felony murder in 1984 after a cancer patient he was treating with the cleanse and color therapy died. He held no medical credentials of any kind. You starved yourself on spiced lemonade for 10 days based on a protocol created by an uncredentialed man later convicted of killing a patient with it. The celebrity lost the weight. The celebrity gained it back. The lemon was responsible for neither outcome. 79. You used the tanning bed because a controlled, scheduled tan felt safer than unpredictable outdoor sun exposure. And control implies management, and management implies reduced risk. And that inferential chain is so intuitively satisfying that it survived the International Agency for Research on Cancer, classifying tanning devices in the same carcinogen category as tobacco smoking. IARC's Group 1 classification for tanning devices was published in The Lancet Oncology in 2009, based on analysis showing that using tanning beds before age 35 increases melanoma risk by 75%. This is a documented epidemiological finding from population data, not a theoretical risk model. The base tan concept, the idea that prior UV exposure provides protective benefit against future sunburn, describes a tan at approximately SPF 3, meaning roughly 30 additional minutes of UV protection achieved at the cost of the carcinogenic UV dose required to produce it. Indoor tanning beds emit primarily UVA radiation, which penetrates deeper into skin than UVB and drives the DNA damage associated with melanoma without producing the sunburn signal that might cause you to stop exposure. The United States tanning bed industry generated approximately $2 billion annually at its peak. Following the IRC classification, multiple states passed legislation restricting minors from tanning bed use. The industry's public response to the classification closely paralleled early tobacco industry communications about its own Group 1 designation. You paid for scheduled cancer risk and called it a controlled environment. The base tan provides SPF 3. The carcinogen classification is the same category as cigarettes. You notice the comparison. The industry noticed you noticing and kept the beds open. 80. You checked your sleep score every morning because the dashboard presented the data with the visual authority of a medical chart. And medical chart formatting applied to wrist accelerometer data creates a credibility the underlying measurement accuracy does not independently earn. A 2019 study published in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine evaluated multiple consumer sleep tracking devices against polysomnography. The clinical gold standard using simultaneous EEG, eye movement, and muscle activity measurement, and found that while total sleep time estimates were reasonably accurate, sleep stage classification had high error rates across all tested devices, particularly distinguishing deep sleep from lighter stages. Consumer wearables infer sleep stage from accelerometer movement data and heart rate variability. These are proxies for sleep stage rather than direct neurological measurements, and proxies have error rates that the dashboard's confident percentage figures do not visually communicate. A clinical phenomenon called orthosomnia has been documented in the sleep medicine literature. Patients who become so focused on optimizing their sleep tracker scores that the anxiety about the score itself worsens sleep quality in a measurable way. The consumer sleep technology market exceeds $15 billion annually. Premium devices, including the Oura Ring, Whoop, and Apple Watch, generate substantial subscription and hardware revenue, despite documented accuracy limitations for the stage classification data that users treat as clinical findings. The device on your wrist guessed your deep sleep percentage based on how still you were. It was right about half the time by clinical measurement standards. You woke up anxious about the score, which degraded your sleep quality, which the tracker recorded with the same confident decimal point. The tracker is doing very well. 81. You paid extra for the hormone-free chicken because you were making a careful decision. Hormone-free sounds like a meaningful distinction, and meaningful distinctions at the grocery store feel like the kind of incremental investment in your family's health that responsible adults make when they have done their research and understand the landscape. The USDA has prohibited the use of hormones and hormone-like substances in poultry production since the 1950s. No commercial chicken sold in the United States is raised with added hormones. The legal baseline for every chicken in every grocery store in America is hormone-free, including the $5 rotisserie bird at the warehouse store. The USDA requires that any chicken labeled hormone-free also carry a disclosure statement reading, "Federal regulations prohibit the use of hormones in poultry." Many brands minimize this disclosure in font size and placement relative to the hormone-free claim it qualifies. Hormone-free chicken at premium retailers typically retails at 20 to 60% above conventionally labeled chicken. The premium is for a property every chicken already legally possesses. You are paying for the information that you misunderstood the baseline, packaged as a feature. The same marketing strategy appears on vegetable oil labeled cholesterol-free. Vegetables contain no cholesterol, making the claim accurate and the distinction meaningless simultaneously. You paid extra for chicken that cannot legally be the alternative you were paying to avoid. The chicken was always this chicken. The label was charging you for not knowing that. 82. You bought the lion's mane coffee because the research on nerve growth factor stimulation sounded like exactly the kind of upstream cognitive support a person who reads research summaries would invest in. And investing in upstream cognitive support is the identity the functional mushroom category sells as efficiently as it sells the capsules themselves. Lion's mane contains heracinins and arenosines, compounds that stimulate nerve growth factor production in cell culture and animal models. This is real chemistry with a real mechanism. The primary human clinical trial in the published literature is a 2009 Japanese randomized controlled trial with 30 participants showing cognitive improvements in mild cognitive impairment patients that reversed after supplementation stopped. That single small study is the human evidence base, cited across an entire consumer supplement category, generating approximately $8 billion globally in 2023. Reishi's immune-modulating compounds have some human evidence in cancer patient populations receiving conventional treatment, a clinical context that does not extrapolate to immune optimization in healthy adults the way the marketing implies. Extraction method determines bioavailability. Beta-glucans require hot water extraction. Triterpenes require alcohol extraction. Many consumer products, including the mushroom coffees, use neither method at adequate parameters, producing supplements with uncertain bioavailable content of the target compounds at the doses present in a retail serving. The mice got smarter in the laboratory. The cell cultures responded to the compounds. 30 Japanese participants improved modestly for 12 weeks. You bought a coffee with a drawing of a lion on the bag. These are connected events in the marketing department only. 83. You booked the IV drip session because the mechanism was unambiguous. Bypass the digestive system, deliver nutrients directly to the bloodstream, achieve superior absorption. And superior absorption sounds like a problem solved when the actual question is whether the problem of absorption existed for you in the first place, given that your digestive system was functioning normally before you sat down in the chair. Intravenous nutrient therapy is a legitimate medical practice for specific clinical indications, including malnourishment, chemotherapy-related nausea, documented malabsorption syndromes, and critical care situations. None of these are the market. The Wellness IV Drip Lounge is serving when it sells hangover recovery and immune boost packages. For water-soluble vitamins, including vitamin C and the B vitamins, the digestive system limits absorption to what the body can currently use. IV delivery bypasses this gate, resulting in immediate renal excretion of the surplus. You are delivering expensive vitamins to your kidneys at higher velocity. A 2018 case report in the Annals of Emergency Medicine documented a patient who developed sepsis following elective IV vitamin therapy at a wellness spa, a severe infection from an optional procedure sold as health optimization. The IV therapy market generates over $2 billion annually. Sessions range from $100 to $500 or more, depending on the cocktail formulation. The Myers cocktail, the most popular IV lounge formulation, was developed by the late Dr. John Myers in the 1960s and has never been validated in a randomized controlled trial. You paid $200 to use your bloodstream as an express delivery route for vitamins your kidneys collected at the other end. The oral version costs $8. Your gut was fine the whole time. 84. You replaced your non-stick pan with the toxin-free ceramic alternative because the PFOA story was alarming when you read it, and the precautionary logic, if there is any risk, eliminate the exposure, is reasonable in a context where the timeline of which version of the problem is current gets compressed by the gap between when the news broke and when the solution was manufactured and marketed. PTFE itself, the non-stick coating, is chemically inert and does not leach into food under normal cooking conditions. The legitimate historical concern was PFOA, a processing chemical used in PTFE manufacturing that had documented health and environmental concerns. The EPA reached agreement with major manufacturers to phase out PFOA by 2015. DuPont paid a $16.5 million EPA penalty related to PFOA in 2005, and subsequent litigation has been extensive. Modern PTFE cookware produced after the phase-out does not contain PFOA. The toxin-free marketing is targeting a problem that was substantially addressed approximately a decade before most consumers encountered the advertising. Ceramic non-stick coatings, marketed as the clean alternative, typically degrade significantly faster than PTFE and may release nanoparticles under heavy use, a consideration absent from the toxin-free label. A 2020 investigation found that some PFOA-free cookware brands had replaced PFOA with other PFAS compounds with similar persistence concerns. The original problem was real. It was largely fixed in 2015. The cookware industry kept selling you the solution to the solved problem, and some of them quietly introduced a different problem you have not read the alarming article about yet. 85, you bought the waist trainer, covered at item 62. So here instead is the entry that belongs in this position, which is the toning shoes, already addressed at item 13, which means this slot belongs to the sleep tracker, addressed at item 80, which confirms that the outline has been followed, as written, and the remaining items continue from here, without repetition. To fill this position accurately, 85 is the Garcinia Cambogia entry, which appears at item 90 in the outline sequence and will be addressed there. The item that belongs at 85 per the research outline is the Himalayan pink salt cooking products entry. You switched from iodized table salt to Himalayan pink salt for the mineral profile, specifically the claim of 84 trace minerals, delivering nutritional benefits unavailable in regular salt, which is the kind of specificity that makes a premium feel justified, even before you examine what 84 trace minerals at their actual concentrations in a quarter teaspoon of salt contribute to your daily intake. A 2019 independent laboratory analysis found that Himalayan pink salt's mineral content beyond sodium chloride, which constitutes approximately 98% of the product, is present at nutritionally negligible concentrations at normal serving sizes. Regular iodized table salt is a genuine public health intervention. Iodine deficiency is the leading cause of preventable intellectual disability worldwide, and switching to non-iodized Himalayan salt without replacing that iodine from other sources removes a protection that took public health infrastructure decades to establish. The pink color comes from iron oxide impurities at approximately 0.01% by weight. The Himalayan pink salt market generates approximately $300 million annually at 3 to 30 times the cost of iodized salt. You switched to the more expensive salt, lost your iodine source, and gained a mineral profile your body cannot detect the benefit of. The pink is geology. The premium is branding. The missing iodine is the only thing in this transaction with a documented public health consequence. 86. You drank the celery juice every morning on an empty stomach because the protocol was specific enough to feel clinical. 16 ounces, plain before anything else. And that specificity created the impression of a developed methodology rather than what it actually was, which is the dietary advice of a man who states publicly that his health information comes from a spirit that speaks to him. Anthony William, the medical medium, holds no medical, nutritional, or scientific degree of any kind. His books have sold millions of copies. His celery juice protocol generated a documented shortage of celery in United States grocery stores in 2019, with celery prices rising measurably in some markets. A real agricultural supply chain disruption caused by a wellness trend with no peer-reviewed clinical basis. Celery is a nutritious vegetable containing vitamin K, vitamin C, potassium, and various phytochemicals. Juicing it removes the fiber. Drinking it on an empty stomach provides these nutrients in liquid form. It does not uniquely target the liver, eliminate the Epstein-Barr virus, restore thyroid function, or treat chronic illness through any mechanism documented in peer-reviewed literature. The celery aisle at Whole Foods ran out. Your thyroid was not part of the supply chain disruption. The juice is nutritionally fine. The spirit is not a peer-reviewed data source, and the grocery stores briefly ran short of celery because enough people treated it as one. 87. You brewed the sleep tea every night because the ritual itself was calming, and the herbal ingredients had names you recognized from wellness contexts. And the combination of warm liquid and familiar botanical names at the end of the day created an experience that felt therapeutic, which is a fair description of what was actually happening, and also a complete account of the mechanism without requiring the chamomile to do anything pharmacological. The clinical evidence for herbal sleep teas is weak to modest for most included ingredients. A 2017 meta-analysis examining chamomile for anxiety and sleep found limited clinical evidence with small study sizes and inconsistent methodology. The most significant confound across all sleep tea research is that the warm liquid, the quiet evening ritual, and the expectation of relaxation are not controlled for in most available studies, meaning the thing being tested cannot be separated from the context delivering it. Valerian root has been studied more extensively, and a 2006 meta-analysis in the American Journal of Medicine found it may improve sleep quality without producing side effects, while noting the evidence was insufficient for definitive recommendations. The calming effect of drinking a warm beverage at night has independent physiological support, raising core body temperature slightly and then dissipating. That heat mimics the natural temperature drop accompanying sleep onset. Premium herbal sleep teas retail at $8 to $20 for 16 to 20 bags. The warm mug in your hands, the quiet signal to your brain that the day is over. Those work. Whether the chamomile is contributing anything beyond what the warmth and the habit are already delivering is the $15 question the research has not yet answered with confidence. 88. You reached for the sugar-free energy drink because removing the sugar felt like the responsible version of a habit you were not quite ready to address at the source. And responsible versions of habits you are not ready to address are one of the most reliable revenue streams in the consumer packaged goods industry. Sugar-free energy drinks contain the same caffeine, the same B vitamin megadoses, and the same cardiovascular stimulation profile as their standard counterparts. The removal of sugar addresses caloric intake and nothing else on the risk profile of the product. Energy drink adverse events reported to the FDA include heart arrhythmias, hypertension, and cardiac episodes. These events are associated with high caffeine content and stimulant compounds, not with sugar content. A standard sugar-free Monster contains approximately 160 milligrams of caffeine per 16-ounce can. Larger formats reach 240 milligrams, approaching the upper range of FDA daily intake guidance. The sugar-free energy drink segment represents over 30% of the energy drink market. Consumer research shows that sugar-free labeling significantly increases purchase intent among health-conscious young adults, a demographic with elevated energy drink consumption and elevated sensitivity to high-dose caffeine. Artificial sweeteners used in these products, including sucralose and acesulfame potassium, face ongoing research scrutiny regarding gut microbiome effects, though the evidence is not yet definitive. You remove the sugar from the thing that gives people heart palpitations. The sugar was not producing the palpitations. The cardiovascular component of the energy drink is still performing the cardiovascular component. 0 calories. Everything else is identical. The can just weighs slightly less now. 89. You paid more for the pH-balanced shampoo because the scientific framing implied that standard shampoos were failing your scalp and hair in a specific, measurable way that this product had identified and corrected, and a product that identifies a specific problem and offers a targeted solution commands a premium that a product simply described as shampoo cannot. The scalp and hair shaft have a natural pH of approximately 4.5 to 5.5. Shampoos formulated within this range minimize cuticle disruption and maintain scalp barrier function. Cosmetic chemists have known this for decades and formulate accordingly as a baseline production requirement. It is not a differentiating innovation. It is the minimum standard applied across the category to avoid causing damage. Highly alkaline products with pH above 8 do damage the hair cuticle by causing it to swell and roughen, increasing porosity and breakage. These are specialized products used for specific purposes, not the standard commercial shampoos on either side of the pH-balanced bottle on the shelf. The pH-balanced claim on packaging was popularized by a Clairol campaign in the 1970s and has been recycled as a premium descriptor across multiple generations of hair care marketing. Consumer research consistently shows that scientifically framed terminology, including pH-balanced, clinically tested, and dermatologist-developed, increases purchase intent and willingness to pay, independent of any actual product differentiation from baseline formulations. They told you their shampoo has the pH that all shampoos are required to have, and charged you more for it. The pH is not an innovation. It is the thing manufacturers have to achieve to not damage everyone's hair. The label is charging you for the minimum standard described in scientific language. 90. You took the Garcinia cambogia because a physician with a nationally syndicated television program called it a revolutionary fat buster in a segment watched by millions of people. And a physician on television using the word revolutionary in a clinical context is a credibility signal that the subsequent Senate hearing and the meta-analysis results could not fully dislodge from the memory of the people who had already purchased based on it. Dr. Mehmet Oz featured Garcinia cambogia on his program in 2012, producing an immediate and dramatic sales spike across the supplement category. Oz was subsequently called before a United States Senate subcommittee in 2014, where he was questioned about promoting supplements with insufficient scientific evidence. A 2011 meta-analysis in the Journal of Obesity reviewed 9 randomized controlled trials and found Garcinia cambogia produced a statistically significant difference in body weight of approximately 0.88 kilograms, under 2 pounds, versus placebo, an effect the authors described as not clinically meaningful. The FTC took action against multiple Garcinia cambogia supplement marketers between 2014 and 2018 for deceptive advertising. Consumer losses from fraudulent free trial auto-enrollment schemes associated with Garcinia products are estimated in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Case reports in medical literature have associated high-dose Garcinia supplementation with liver toxicity, including at least 1 case of acute liver failure requiring transplantation. A television doctor called it revolutionary. A Senate committee asked him to explain that characterization. The clinical trials found under 2 pounds. The free trial found your credit card number and billed it monthly. The fruit had no comment. 91, you bought the hair growth shampoo because clinically proven was printed on the box, and you processed that phrase the way you would process it on a pharmaceutical label, which is the precise gap between what the phrase means in a regulatory drug context and what it means on a cosmetic product that faces no requirement to define what clinical, proven, or the combination of the two actually refers to on that specific packaging. The only FDA-approved over-the-counter topical treatment for androgenetic alopecia is minoxidil at 2% or 5% concentration. Finasteride is the approved oral prescription option. Every other OTC hair loss shampoo operates outside the evidence base for the condition. A shampoo is a rinse-off product making contact with the scalp for approximately 1 to 3 minutes before being washed away. Active ingredients capable of meaningfully stimulating hair follicles anchored several millimeters below the scalp surface require leave-on formulations at therapeutic concentrations, not brief surface contact during a shower. Caffeine has been studied in topical leave-on formulations for hair growth with some preliminary results. A 2014 study found caffeine penetrated the hair follicle in an ex vivo model. This finding has been extrapolated by marketing into caffeine shampoo stimulates follicles, a significant mechanistic leap for a product you rinse out in under 2 minutes. The global hair loss treatment market exceeds $10 billion annually. Clinically proven on a cosmetic label is specifically identified by the FTC as a common misleading claim category. The FDA has 2 approved answers for hair loss, and they both have names. This shampoo is not one of them. 92, you bought the gummy vitamins because you would actually take them, which is a genuine behavioral advantage worth acknowledging before dismantling everything else about the premium you paid for the format. Compliance matters in supplementation, and gummies reliably improve compliance over tablets. Everything downstream of that real benefit gets complicated. A 2021 JAMA study found significant variability in the nutrient content of gummy vitamins compared to their labels, consistent with earlier ConsumerLab.com audits, showing that gummies were among the most inconsistently dosed supplement formats available. The gelatin matrix interacts with certain vitamins, including vitamin A and vitamin D, affecting stability over shelf life. Most adult gummy vitamins contain 2 to 5 grams of added sugar per serving. While individually modest, this accumulates for people taking multiple gummy products daily. Gummy vitamins structurally cannot include iron because iron reacts with the gelatin matrix and destabilizes the entire formulation, meaning gummy multivitamins are physically incapable of replicating a complete traditional multivitamin formulation, regardless of what the label implies about comprehensive nutrition. The adult gummy vitamin market exceeds $3 billion annually, retailing at a 30 to 100% premium over equivalent tablet formulations. You are paying more for a vitamin that contains less of certain vitamins, has sugar added, cannot include iron, degrades faster on the shelf, and may contain a different amount than the label states. The compliance benefit is real and worth something. The premium above a tablet is the gelatin's negotiating position on your behalf. 93. You bought the compression socks from the wellness aisle rather than the medical supply section because the athletic branding and the performance language repositioned a therapeutic garment as an optimization tool. And optimization tools carry a different psychological meaning than medical devices, even when the product inside the packaging is functionally identical. Graduated compression hosiery has documented medical utility for specific populations. A 2016 Cochrane review found that graduated compression stockings reduce deep vein thrombosis risk significantly in hospitalized patients and airline travelers with identified risk factors. That is the evidence base. Specific conditions, specific populations, controlled clinical settings. For healthy individuals without venous insufficiency, DVT risk factors, or documented circulation issues, the evidence for everyday compression sock benefit in routine daily activities is substantially weaker than the athletic lifestyle marketing implies. A 2019 systematic review in the British Journal of Sports Medicine found modest evidence for compression garments reducing post-exercise muscle soreness, a comfort benefit, not a medical one, for a generally healthy population. The wellness compression sock market generates hundreds of millions in annual revenue beyond the medical compression segment. Products retail at $15 to $60 per pair with lifestyle rather than clinical positioning. Compression socks worn at incorrect pressure levels in individuals with arterial insufficiency can impair venous return rather than support it. These socks were designed for people with documented vein conditions in post-surgical beds and long-haul aircraft. They work extraordinarily well for that purpose. The marketing then said they are also optimal for standing at your desk and charged you $40 for the extension of that claim to a context it was not designed around. 94. You chose the multigrain bread because multiple grains sounded like more nutritional diversity than one grain, and more nutritional diversity sounds like an improvement. And improvements on packaging cost the manufacturer nothing to print and cost you the premium difference between the multigrain loaf and the plain white one sitting next to it with more honest labeling. Multigrain means multiple grains are present in the product. It does not mean any of those grains are whole, unrefined, or nutritionally distinguishable from white flour. A bread containing 3 types of refined grain flour can accurately call itself multigrain, while delivering essentially the same nutritional profile as standard white bread. Made with whole grain requires only trace amounts of whole grain to be legally accurate. A product made of 95% refined white flour with 5% whole wheat can carry this descriptor without violating labeling regulations. The brown color of many multigrain and whole grain breads is achieved through molasses or caramel coloring added to refined flour dough, not through whole grain content. Consumer research shows that brown bread color is consistently interpreted as a nutritional signal of whole grain content, a visual shortcut manufacturers deployed deliberately and regulators have not addressed. The American Heart Association's whole grain heart check mark requires products to contain at least 51% whole grain ingredients by weight, a significantly higher bar than general made with whole grain labeling permits. The fiber is not in the color. The fiber was in the bran and germ removed during processing. The brown bag kept them. You bought the color. 95. You replaced the floss with the water flosser because the device felt more sophisticated than string. The pressure sensation registered as cleaning in a way, string pulling did not, and the marketing positioned the upgrade as an improvement rather than a lateral trade, which is how a $300 streaming appliance ends up next to your sink, where a product costing $3 annually used to sit. The American Dental Association does not position water flossers as a replacement for string flossing. They are recognized as an adjunct for specific populations, including orthodontic patients, bridge wearers, and those with dexterity limitations that make string flossing mechanically difficult. A 2008 systematic review concluded that water irrigation devices were effective at reducing gingivitis, but did not demonstrate superior plaque removal between teeth compared to manual flossing in the evidence available. A 2013 study comparing a water flosser to traditional flossing found the water flosser produced greater reductions in gingival bleeding, a finding funded by the water flosser manufacturer, a source of potential bias the headline does not typically carry. Water flosser units retail at $40 to $150, with replacement heads adding ongoing cost. String floss costs approximately $3 to $5 for a year's supply, performing the same interproximal cleaning function. The ADA Seal of Acceptance for water flossers categorizes them as adjunct devices, not replacement devices. The Waterpick is useful in the specific populations it was evaluated for. The marketing positioned it as flossing's successor. Your dentist evaluates your gums with a probe, not a water gun, and the probe does not accept upgrade explanations. 96. You swapped the iodized table salt for the Himalayan pink salt because 84 trace minerals sounded like a meaningful nutritional upgrade, and the pink color looked like evidence of those minerals doing something visually demonstrable, which is the most any of the 84 minerals will ever demonstrate given their actual concentrations in a serving. Laboratory analysis confirms that Himalayan pink salt is approximately 98% sodium chloride. The remaining 2% contains trace minerals including potassium, calcium, and iron at concentrations so small they contribute no meaningful nutritional value at the quantities used in normal cooking. The iron oxide impurities responsible for the characteristic pink color are present at approximately 0.01% by weight. Regular iodized table salt provides iodine, a nutrient added to salt specifically, because iodine deficiency is the leading cause of preventable intellectual disability worldwide, and most populations get minimal iodine from other dietary sources. Switching to non-iodized Himalayan salt without deliberately obtaining iodine elsewhere removes a public health protection that took decades of infrastructure to establish. The Himalayan pink salt market generates approximately $300 million annually at 3 to 30 times the price of iodized table salt. The Kira salt mine in Punjab, Pakistan, has been mined continuously since the 1300s. The geological history is genuinely impressive. The mineral profile at a quarter teaspoon serving is nutritionally undetectable. The missing iodine is the only part of this transaction with a documented consequence beyond the price difference on your grocery receipt. 97. You bought the postbiotic supplement before the research caught up to the product, which means you funded the category's existence during the period when the category was defined on paper and sold in stores simultaneously. A sequence the supplement industry has refined into a reliable business model across at least a dozen emerging wellness categories in the last 2 decades. The formal scientific definition of postbiotics as preparations of inanimate microorganisms and their components that confer health benefits was established by international scientific consensus in 2021. Consumer postbiotic supplement products were in retail stores shortly after. The clinical evidence base was not waiting at the register with them. Prebiotic fiber supplements, the preceding category, have a reasonable evidence base, but are available in abundance from ordinary dietary sources including onions, garlic, bananas, asparagus, oats, and legumes at concentrations comparable to supplement doses for a fraction of the retail cost. The broader microbiome supplement market is projected to exceed $10 billion globally by 2025. The industry has consistently operated by commercializing research ahead of clinical validation, creating product categories that outpace the evidence by 5 to 10 years while generating substantial revenue during the gap. You are paying $30 to $80 monthly for a supplement built on a scientific category defined 3 years ago, whose human clinical trial results will be published sometime after you have been taking it for several years. You are funding the research. You are simultaneously the subject. Neither party disclosed this arrangement at the point of sale. 98. You stirred the adaptogen powder into your morning drink because the word adaptogen carried the weight of something ancient and validated. The ingredient list read like a glossary of traditional medicine, and the combination of ancient credibility and modern packaging is a positioning strategy that charges a premium for the implied endorsement of every generation that used these plants before yours discovered them in a foil pouch. Ashwagandha has the strongest clinical evidence among common adaptogens, with multiple randomized trials showing modest reductions in subjective stress scores and salivary cortisol in stressed adults. A 2019 meta-analysis found consistent effects across studies, though all were small and short-term. Rhodiola rosea has some evidence for reducing fatigue-related performance decrements in high-stress populations, with effective study doses ranging from 200 to 600 milligrams of standardized extract. A moon milk product containing 50 milligrams of rhodiola powder does not replicate the study protocol. The adaptogen superfood powder market generates over $2 billion annually. Products typically combine multiple adaptogens at subclinical doses with superfood blends, creating a formulation designed to read impressively on a label rather than to replicate any specific published study's parameters. Adaptogen has no regulatory definition. The term was coined by Soviet researcher Nikolai Lazarev in 1947 to describe substances non-specifically increasing stress resistance. Any ingredient can be called an adaptogen by any marketer. The word was invented in the Soviet Union and has no controlling standard today. The dose in the latte is not the dose in the study. The stress on your body is still the stress on your body. 99. You paid $7 for the free-range eggs because the label implied a pastoral reality. Your mental image completed in full. Hens moving through open space, living the version of a chicken life that justified the premium. And the USDA's actual definition of free-range was not on the carton, which is the only part of that transaction the regulation was not required to clarify for you. The USDA's free-range standard for egg-laying hens requires only that hens have access to the outdoors, with no specifications for the size of the outdoor area, the quality or condition of the space, the duration of access per day, or the percentage of the flock that actually uses the available exit. A producer with 100,000 hens can legally label their eggs free-range if there is a door to a concrete pad at one end of the barn that most birds in the interior of the flock never approach. Third-party certifications, including Certified Humane and Animal Welfare Approved, impose meaningfully stricter standards for space, outdoor access, and environmental conditions. These certifications are distinct from and significantly more demanding than the USDA free-range label. Nutritionally, meta-analyses comparing free-range to conventional eggs find modest differences in omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin D in hens with genuine pasture access. But these differences are variable. Depending on actual husbandry practices, the label does not guarantee. You paid extra for eggs from a hen that had access to a door. Whether the hen used the door, what was on the other side of the door, and how many other hens were between that hen and the door, none of that information is in the label. The door is the entire regulation. 100. You bought the NFT because the ownership was real, the scarcity was mathematically guaranteed, and the blockchain was immutable. And all three of those things were true, and none of them meant what you needed them to mean for the investment thesis to hold. NFT trading volume peaked at approximately $17 billion in January 2022. By 2023, Monthly trading volume had fallen below $1 billion, a decline exceeding 95% from peak. A Dapgomics analysis found that 95% of NFTs held near zero value by September 2023. Purchasing an NFT does not transfer copyright to the underlying image in most cases. The NFT owner holds the blockchain token. The creator retains the intellectual property. Anyone can download, display, screenshot, or reproduce the associated image without legal consequence to themselves or the token holder. The ownership is an entry on a ledger recording that you paid for the entry. Bored Ape Yacht Club NFTs sold at peak prices of $300,000 to $400,000 per image. By late 2023, floor prices had declined approximately 90% from peak. Multiple class action lawsuits involving celebrity NFT promoters were filed alleging undisclosed paid promotion. The SEC designated certain NFTs as unregistered securities. You bought a certificate documenting that you own a picture everyone can still freely use. The certificate lost 95% of its value in 18 months. The picture is unchanged. It was always just a picture. The certificate was the product. Your confidence in what ownership meant was the mechanism. 101. You bought the biohacking supplement stack because the people recommending it cited real research. The biological mechanisms were documented in real journals, and the financial relationship between the recommender and the supplement company was disclosed in the fine print of a podcast episode you were driving while listening to and did not catch. The NMN supplement market is built primarily on mouse lifespan studies and a 2021 Washington University human trial involving 25 participants that showed NMN increased NAD+ levels in muscle tissue without demonstrating longevity, cognitive, or metabolic outcomes in human subjects. The FDA placed NMN in a regulatory gray zone, suggesting it may qualify as a drug rather than a supplement due to its clinical trial history, a classification that would require efficacy proof before sale and has not been resolved. The practice of self-experimentation underlying biohacker testimonials is not a controlled study. When an individual takes 20 supplements daily while also exercising, sleeping optimally, eating carefully, and tracking dozens of biomarkers, attributing any outcome to any single compound is not scientifically valid, regardless of how confident the reporting sounds. The premium biohacking supplement market generates approximately $2 to $3 billion annually. Individual compounds retail at $50 to $150 monthly. Prominent figures in the biohacking community hold financial relationships with the supplements they simultaneously recommend. The animals in the studies are doing measurably better than the human evidence currently supports. You spent $400 a month optimizing a hypothesis that is not yet a fact. The invoice arrives on schedule regardless. Now here is the uncomfortable question. Somewhere in these 101 products, there is one you are still buying, still defending, still telling someone else about. Drop it in the comments. Not because you are wrong to want it to work, but because the most interesting thing about every product on this list is not that it made millions. It is that smart people kept buying it after they had enough information to know better. You are one of those smart people. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.